Chapter 852. Any normal person could tell that Li Hao and his father were a pair of weirdos. To put it bluntly, Li Hao's blatant provocation of Huaxiu's local cultivation education system was essentially because foreign blood flowed in his veins. His mother was from Huaxiu and his father, Li Jiao, was from Lixiu. From the moment he was born, Li Hao had become a famous local product of Lixiu, a combination of a vampire and a cultivator. Vampire cultivators had a natural advantage over ordinary cultivators in terms of cultivation, and this was a special group categorized by the International Introduction to Cultivation. In fact, according to the International Cultivation Convention, special cultivation groups had to be regulated by local authorities and had to prove that they were harmless before they could enjoy the same rights as ordinary people. So the fact that Li Jiao and Li Hao were still alive proved that these two actually weren't bad at heart, perhaps they were just pure morons who deserved a beating. Wang Ling thought about how these two had been born as vampire cultivators and had worked hard to fight for the rights of ordinary people in Lixiu. How many old grannies had they had to help cross the road in exchange for their current freedom? And the vampires who truly couldn't control their desire for blood and were regulated in Lixiu were the ones who lived in the dark. Sitting in the lounge, Wang Ling thought that Li Hao and his son were actually quite similar to the group of keyboard warriors online. They were one on the internet, and another in reality. Lixiu had always strictly regulated vampires, but it was as if this father and son pair had been completely liberated when they came to Huaxiu. Vampire cultivators were opponents that Wang Ling had never encountered before, and he didn't know what a real fight would be like. But for Wang Ling, a fight at this level wasn't a fight at all, it was just a game. Wang Ling even felt that taking Dog 2 for a stroll on the streets would be more tiring than a fight of this scale. The main point was that he couldn't burn any calories at all. There were still 2 matches left before the duel with Li Hao and his father. Although the teams had already been assigned, the order of the fights was decided by drawing lots. The first 2 battles were between Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen and 2 students from Class 2 of the elite class, and the last one was also a battle between Class 2 of the elite class. One of their opponents was Nan Su, a student from Reliance High School, and the other was an expert whom Wang Ling had inadvertently noticed, Gu Xuanji. Back to Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. Wang Ling's attitude toward these 2 people had changed a little in the last 2 days. That was because Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen had bought a truckload of crispy noodle snacks last night. They were all limited edition, which was really rare. So Wang Ling's current request for Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen was that they could have a civil battle if they wanted. However, he definitely could not enter Grade 1, Class 3 as it would severely affect his ability to suppress his grades. As long as he did not enter Grade 1, Class 3, everything else was fine. If they did, then he would have to deal with them. This was the message he had sent to Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen last night. Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen trembled when they saw the message. They didn't dare doubt it, because Wang Ling indeed had the strength to do so. And in this battle, Wang Ling had noticed another expert, Gu Xuanji. This person had hidden himself so well that even Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen hadn't sensed him. But Wang Ling was sure that this person's background wasn't simple, because he also had the aura of the domain of the gods on him. Gu Xuanji. Wang Ling repeated this name in his heart. He had heard Wang Zhen say before that the aristocratic family that currently dominated ninefold of the domain of the gods and was known as the #1 empire was the Gu family. But did this Gu Xuanji have anything to do with the Gu family? Logically speaking, if Gu Xuanji was a member of the Gu family, then Wang Zhen should have sensed it long ago. Although Wang Zhen's strength was still restricted by heavenly Dao, he regarded the Gu family as his mortal enemy. Therefore, he should be extremely sensitive to anyone from the Gu family. But Wang Zhen didn't react at all. And that was the strangest thing. Fortunately, Wang Ling had already noticed this Gu Xuanji. Given the current situation, it definitely wasn't the time to alert the enemy. Wang Ling could only pretend that he didn't know. Furthermore, this Gu Xuanji was very strange. He seemed to have some kind of magic treasure on him that could block out mind reading, so Wang Ling had no idea whether the other party was coming for Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, or him. In a situation where he didn't know the other party's true purpose, pretending not to know was the best option, because this usually meant that he could extort a few more crispy noodle snacks from Gu Xuanji. As expected, the showdown between Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen's team against the elite students from Class 2 ended quickly. However, they held back and didn't make the Class 2 students lose too badly, and even sacrificed their bodies to let the Class 2 students hit them a few times. It could be said that the two elite students from Class 2 had lost very gracefully. The only downside was that the two Class 2 students felt their hands hurt after they left the arena. Wang Ling also paid special attention to Gu Xuanji's team. This Gu Xuanji had extremely strong body techniques and hand-to-hand combat skills, which cultivators called body techniques. He didn't use any special spells at all, and didn't even use a magic treasure to defeat the Class 2 students. Compared with Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen, who had held back, Gu Xuanji's attacks were completely ruthless. Throughout the fight, everyone saw his afterimages fly around the arena, and before they could react, the Class 2 students had already fallen. The audience cried out in alarm. Several number 60 high teachers who were watching the fight flipped through Gu Xuanji's information. Which school is this Gu Xuanji from? So strong. Garreton Cultivation College. Old Antique pushed up his glasses and said, "It's also a cultivation high school in Songhai City, but it's ranked at the bottom, and its overall strength is even weaker than number 60 highs." This student Gu Xuanji was originally a transfer student from Garreton Cultivation College, and was transferred in 3 months ago. This is a rare good seedling. The teachers sighed one after another. This student Gu seems to be proficient in body techniques, and apart from grade 1, Class 3 Super Chin, there are almost no other students in our number 60 high school who are good at body techniques. If we can recruit him to our number 60 high school, it will be of great help to this batch of students in body technique training and research. Even I've never seen the body technique he used before. Furthermore, his body techniques are superb, which reminds me of a legendary person with extraordinary body techniques. Are you talking about Duan Yu? Old Antique asked. That's right, it really is him. The teacher nodded. But no one can learn Duan Yu's skills. In order to maximize the effect of his adrenaline in his body technique, he personally broke his own. Old Antique said. Chapter 853. In many people's eyes, Gu Xuanji's body technique was like a noble waltz dance performance. There wasn't the slightest bit of artifice, and it was as if all his strength was within his control, perfectly arranged. The duel was based on a point accumulation system to stop once the victor passed out. Once someone passed out, the duel would end. Gu Xuanji's light attacks had earned him over 1,000 points, while the two poor Class 2 students hadn't even been able to touch a single strand of Gu Xuanji's hair. This person is like a swimming dragon. Someone in the field marveled at Gu Xuanji's marvelous body techniques. Whether it was his body technique or his body technique, this person had reached a heaven-defying level. Wang Ling closed his eyes. The outcome of this battle had already been decided, and he was no longer paying attention. But now, he had to figure out who on earth Gu Xuanji was, what was his objective, and why couldn't Wang Ling peer into Gu Xuanji's heart. A few seconds later, Wang Ling's spiritual will directly arrived at the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee's conference room. The 6 great Heavenly Tao who were having a tea party were startled by the reward of this willpower, and Strength Heavenly Tao was so startled that he directly spat out the tea in his mouth at Time Heavenly Tao's face. The 6 great Heavenly Tao got up one after another, and then Strength Heavenly Tao stepped forward to stare at the eye-catching pair of eyes in the air. They were Wang Ling's unique eyes, a pair of unbelievably beautiful dead fish eyes that were beyond vulgar and traditional. Strength Heavenly Tao pulled his neck back. "Your Excellency Ling, why have you come?" Wang Ling blinked, and the image of Gu Xuanji's battle below was projected through Wang Ling's pupils into the air. So it's to investigate this person. Strength Heavenly Tao understood. He turned to look at the other Heavenly Taos and said, "Everyone, do you have any impression of this person? I know him. After a few seconds of silence, Time Heavenly Tao stepped forward. Your Excellency Spirit, as far as I know, this person doesn't live in the same timeline as Your Excellency Ling. He probably traveled back from the future. After saying that, Time Heavenly Tao waved his hand, and a golden talisman flew out of his palm, which Wang Ling absorbed into his eyes. Time Heavenly Tao, Your Excellency Ling, this is a time locator talisman with my power. Your Excellency Ling, you can fuse it with a magic artifact to create a time-tracking magic artifact. That way, you'll be able to find out this person's specific identity. Wang Ling gave an indifferent reply. Then, he closed his eyes again, and the giant eye in the void disappeared. The great Heavenly Tao heaved a long sigh of relief as they sat on the ground. Strength Heavenly Tao, Time Lord, why didn't you directly tell Lord Ling who this person is? Time Heavenly Tao, do you need me to tell you who His Excellency Ling is? It would be cool if His Excellency Ling investigated it himself. How was it? What's the point of my bootlicking? The other Heavenly Taos, when Wang Ling opened his eyes again in the lounge of number 60 High's elite class, Gu Xuanji's natural and smooth duel had already ended. Time Heavenly Tao had given him a Heavenly Tao golden talisman to track Gu Xuanji's identity. Clearly, Time Heavenly Tao knew Gu Xuanji's identity, but didn't point it out. Heavenly Tao had its own rules. Wang Ling didn't think that he was a difficult person to deal with, and was quite sensible. Since they wanted to investigate it himself, he would do it himself. Wang Ling remembered that there was an abandoned iPad in his bedroom. As long as he used this golden talisman to transform it, it would become a powerful time magic artifact. Wang Ling decided to give that iPad a name, April Aid, Chinese Taoist name, tablet computer. At 3:40 in the afternoon, the long-awaited three-team duel was finally about to begin. Number 60 High's gymnasium had already been set up with a barrier and a temporary fighting stage. It was about the same size as the one at the World Number Martial Arts Club, but the materials were much worse than the ones used on the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception. The school had to save money and spend it on education. Headmaster Chen of Number 60 High was actually famous for being stingy. When Wang Ling and Fang Xing stepped onto the fighting stage, he felt that his shoes were a little dusty. He shouldn't have worn white shoes today. Wang Ling had the most white shoes in his shoe cabinet in the villa. Although they got dirty easily, white was indeed Wang Ling's favorite color as it represented cleanliness and innocence. But Fang Xing, who went on stage with Wang Ling, couldn't care less about his shoes. To be honest, Fang Xing was a little nervous. This was his second time fighting on the same side as Wang Ling. The last time was during the attack on Immortal Mansion, although he had already passed out at the time. Wang Ling, go. Fang Xing, go. Beat the shit out of them. Wang Ling, steady yourself. Just leave the rest to Fang Xing. You have to remember, you'll always be a koi. Fang Xing, if you're a man, press down on Li Hao's head and beat him up for 10 seconds. Wang Ling, what do you want me to do? I'll cooperate. Fang Xing took a deep breath with a very serious expression as he stared at Li Hao and Li Jiao in front of him. This nervousness was purely because he didn't know how to handle this walk. Zhuo was actually the best at handling it. Li Hao went on stage with his arms crossed, his arms bulging with muscles. His entire body was unusually broad, and he was actually 2 heads taller than his father, Li Jiao. Standing behind Li Hao, Li Jiao, who was like a goblin teenager, was completely blocked. Li Jiao was a man who had already lived for more than 800 years. Given his cultivation level, there was no way he could live that long, but it was precisely because he was a vampire that his lifespan was greatly extended. This also seemed to be one of the advantages of vampires. In pursuit of longevity, many cultivators spend a lot of energy on breaking through to the next realm. If they succeeded, they could live for another 100 years, but but if they failed, they would directly die in meditation and turn into a skeleton. Vampires didn't have to worry about longevity at all. Even if their cultivation levels weren't high enough, they could rely on this special constitution to live for a very long time. At that moment, the two sides faced each other solemnly. Contestants in position. Let the match begin. Following a teacher's signal, the spectators stood up. Li Hao directly charged at Wang Ling, picked the soft persimmon to pinch. From the moment he went on stage, his gaze had already been fixed on Wang Ling. He had investigated Fang Xing. The latter was a transfer student from Sakura Middle School, and might not be easy to deal with. But standing in front of him was this thin, weak, and fair-skinned teenager who looked like a typical thin nerd without any protein in him at all. He had definitely grown up eating junk food. Chapter 854. Some people's faces would show the following symptoms when they were angry: increased adrenaline, flushed and wheezing, enlarged pores, wide open eyes, hair standing on end, rapid heartbeat, voting for Kuxuan's new book, and so on. And some people would usually treat it coldly, using absolute indifference to show their resistance. When Wang Ling's expression darkened, Fang Xing could already sense that he was angry. Although Wang Ling was usually a man of few words and had a poker face, when he was angry, this absolute indifference was completely different from usual. The most obvious manifestation was the drop in temperature. The air conditioning in the stadium had only been turned on at 25 degrees Celsius, which was the most suitable temperature, but some of the teachers watching the match couldn't help curling up. What's going on? Why is it so cold all of a sudden? A female teacher sneezed and was surprised to find that the air she exhaled turned into a puff of white smoke in the air. Is the air conditioning broken? A male teacher also felt a little cold, and immediately picked up the communication talisman in his hand. Logistics department, pay attention, turn off the air conditioning. The teacher in the logistics department was stupefied. This definitely wasn't a problem with the air conditioning, it was working normally. But he couldn't explain the sudden drop in temperature in the sports hall at all. He had looked at the thermometer just now, and it was already -3 degrees Celsius. Li Hao's punch was extremely ferocious, but when it got close to Wang Ling, he could clearly feel a chill seep into his body, and as a result, he wasn't able to bring out the full power of his punch, and his muscles felt like they were going to freeze. How can this be? Li Hao furrowed his brows. He felt that his body had become sluggish. Don't look down on people too much. Fang Xing stepped forward of his own accord and caught Li Hao's punch. In fact, it hadn't been a very strong punch, but the reason why Fang Xing had thrown it was to protect Wang Ling. When people were angry, they often lost their minds. If Li Hao had punched Wang Ling just now, given the backlash of his sage body alone, Li Hao's arm would have been directly shaken to powder. There's something wrong with both students. After observing on the side for a moment, Li Diao grabbed Li Hao's lapel and pulled him back. Li Hao was huge, standing there like a small mountain, but when Li Diao lifted him up, it was as if he were carrying a chicken. Because it was too cold, Li Hao's body was shivering. After evolution, vampires had become unafraid of sunlight, but they were afraid of the cold. Vampires were originally a race that relied on the power of blood to survive. The cold would reduce the flow of blood, restrict the movement of vampires, and even their reactions would become sluggish. Li Hao could still be considered a young vampire. Although borrowing the power of vampires allowed his strength to exceed his original realm, his fear of the cold was his weakness. After enraging Wang Ling in this fight, he had actually accidentally exposed Li Hao's weakness. Useless. Looking at his disappointing son in his hands, Li Diao had the urge to crush his balls. In any case, vampires had extremely powerful regenerative abilities. Even if they were crushed, they could still grow back. He was using the power of his own blood to help Li Hao circulate his blood and increase the speed of his blood flow. It was a very comfortable feeling. At this time, Li Hao began to miss a popular drink among the vampires, sanitary napkin coffee. The extreme cold made him miss the feeling of a hot cup of sanitary napkin coffee. The sanitary napkin mixed with thick blood clots in the black coffee was a rare noble drink for the entire vampire race. When Li Hao came back to his senses, he saw that he was in his father's hands, and his expression froze. Father, he had blacked out just now. Because it was too cold. Fortunately, Li Diao had dealt with it in time, so the situation wasn't so embarrassing. It looked like a father helping his son pull away from the fight in preparation for the next attack. Before I crush your balls like a light bulb, you'd better show some vigor. Li Diao stared at Li Hao, his eyes like those of a venomous snake ready to strike. Li Hao quivered behind his back and instantly came back to his senses. At that moment, Li Hao finally realized that these two students from number 60 High's elite class weren't easy opponents to deal with. The sudden drop in temperature was definitely caused by these two people. However, only Li Hao and Li Diao knew what it felt like to be at a disadvantage. Because the fight was being held inside the barrier, the teachers responsible for maintaining the situation were also standing outside. Although they could sense the abnormal change in temperature, they definitely couldn't sense it as deeply as Li Hao, who was inside the barrier. The temperature outside the barrier was -3 degrees Celsius, but inside, it was 10 degrees below zero. Damn it. I've actually lost face in front of my father. Li Hao clenched his teeth. In his anger, his blood flowed even faster. Add to that the power Li Diao had poured into his body. In a flash, Li Hao's fighting strength soared as his emotions were stirred. For vampires, accelerated blood flow meant faster speed, faster reaction time, and greater power. Go, defeat him. Especially that one who grew up eating junk food. Li Diao narrowed his eyes and pointed at Wang Ling, exceptionally confident in his son. Just as he finished speaking, Li Diao suddenly realized that it was as if the surroundings had been frozen, and it was actually a little like time had been frozen. This was a very strange scene, because after time had been frozen, even the whole world had fallen silent. At that moment, apart from Fang Xing and Li Diao, everyone had been frozen, including Li Hao. Wang Ling. Fang Xing was frightened by this power. To actually directly freeze time in the world, how many people in the world could do this? And the most horrified person at that moment was none other than Li Diao. The power of time freeze. In the history of his Li family, there had once been a patriarch called Diao, who had been defeated by a power called the world. At that time, that world was a power similar to time freeze, but only for 5 seconds. But now, a full few minutes had already passed, time was still standing still. Danger. Li Diao instinctively sensed danger. He wanted to grab Li Hao and retreat, but the powerful pressure made him realize that he couldn't move his body. Then, Wang Ling walked toward Li Diao step by step. So it's you. Li Diao broke out in a cold sweat. Wang Ling wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He stretched out his hand and opened up a space in the air. Noodles. Wang Ling directly took out an ordinary crispy noodle snack. Then, he opened the crispy noodle snack, added the pepper and seasoning inside, and kneaded the crispy noodle snack evenly. Li Diao still hadn't figured out what the youngster was up to. Chapter 855. What did it feel like to be forced to drink crispy noodle snacks? Wang Ling controlled each crispy noodle snack down Li Diao's throat, including the pepper, leaving nothing behind. For a moment, Li Diao felt like his throat was a parched desert. All the water had been sucked away by the crispy noodle snacks, and it was so dry that he wanted to cough. But this young devil in front of him had no intention of letting him off at all. He felt like a doll at the mercy of the other party, with no place on his body that he could move. Even his mouth and tongue were under the other party's control, and he had no room to struggle at all. After the whole crispy noodle snack was poured into Li Diao's stomach, the young devil in front of him twisted up the crispy noodle snack packaging and stuffed it into Li Diao's mouth. Finally, he violently pushed Li Diao's jaw. Crack. With the sound of Li Diao's jaw breaking, the crispy noodle snack packaging was also swallowed by Li Diao with a gudong sound. After doing all this, Wang Ling felt that his gloomy mood had finally been lifted. That crispy noodle snack had expired at home, and Wang Ling couldn't bear to throw it away at all. This was a normal version crispy noodle snack. Even if it had expired, as long as a certain amount was gathered, they could go to the shop and exchange it for a better limited edition flavor. How could he bear to let Li Diao eat those limited edition, enchanted versions? In Wang Ling's view, this kind of big idiot with a cheap and smelly mouth who didn't know how to appreciate human delicacies was only fit to eat expired snacks. Giving him an expired crispy noodle snack was already a huge favor. If it wasn't for the fact that there were no other expired snacks at home, Wang Ling would have even wanted to paste the premium dog food that Loopy Toad had hidden in the toilet lid on Li Diao's face. Ooh! Wang Ling let out a long breath. In a flash, Fang Xing and Li Diao felt the temperature around them start to rise, and the air temperature gradually returned to normal. This was Wang Ling's reaction after his anger subsided. Wang Ling had always thought of himself as a relatively easygoing person. The last time he had been this angry was when Dog 2 had been a toad and smashed the flagship store with its butt, which had instantly infuriated him. After the flagship store had been smashed, little Wang Ling hadn't had any good quality noodle snacks to buy, and had only been able to survive on the normal version. But Wang Ling hadn't expected that today, there would actually be another person who would brazenly court death. Fear from the depths of his soul poured into Li Diao's whole body. He had been so high before the battle had started, but now he was terrified. His lower jaw was broken. According to common sense, this kind of injury should be able to recover very quickly with his physique. However, at this moment, the recovery speed of his jaw was actually 90% slower than usual. Although it was recovering, the pain of the broken bones recovering was like a bonfire on his chin. It was a continuous pain. Who are you? Li Diao stared at Wang Ling in fear. Student Wang Ling, are you going to use the amnesia punch? Leave it to me. At that moment, Fang Xing stepped forward. According to the normal operating procedure, he guessed that Wang Ling would definitely use an amnesia spell next. Given how much Li Diao deserved a beating, what kind of amnesia spell was the most brutal? Nothing was better than the amnesia fist. Most importantly, he was afraid that his Wang Ling would directly kill Li Diao, so he decided to do it himself. This way, the strength of the strike would be guaranteed. In any case, he was the leader of the Office of Strategic Deception's Goon Squad. Student Wang Ling, leave the rest to me. Thus, Fang Xing smiled slightly and took the initiative to take over the pot. Wang Ling, When Fang Xing clenched his fists and released his aura, Li Diao's expression changed. Only then did he realize that this Fang Xing wasn't AF*** king normal person. Even without this demon youngster, Li Diao had no chance of winning if Fang Xing were to act alone. Is there anything else you want to ask before you pass out? Fang Xing stared at Li Diao. Li Diao, with your strength, why are you here? Who on earth are you? This spell that stops time, is it called World? Li Diao had a lot of questions. But the only response he got was Fang Xing's words, I'm not telling you. Then, a fist the size of a sandbag smashed into Li Diao's head. Li Diao's vision darkened, and he swiftly fainted. That punch just now was the legendary amnesia fist, but Fang Xing had controlled his strength very well, and was able to erase all of Li Diao's memories of what he had just seen, leaving only the part of him that was afraid of Wang Ling. If Wang Ling had made a move, Fang Xing guessed that Li Diao would very likely have forgotten his own mother. A few minutes after the amnesia fist took effect, time resumed its flow. When Li Diao came back to his senses, he could clearly sense that his mind seemed to be blank. What was going on? He felt as if he had been punched in the face, and even his lower jaw was broken. The most frightening thing was that he had no idea what was going on. Lord Father. How are we going to deal with these two? Which one will you choose? On the other side, Li Diao, who was completely clueless, was brimming with fighting spirit. In the next moment, when Li Diao's eyes met Wang Ling's, terror instantly spread through his heart. All the hairs on his body stood on end. Li Diao raised his hand, his strong will to live telling him that he had to pull Li Hao away from here. But at that moment, his stomach made a gu-gu-gu sound. This was the expired crispy noodle snacks that Wang Ling had fed him just now. It had taken effect. When the crispy noodle snacks had been poured into Li Diao's stomach, Wang Ling had enchanted a bacterium in passing. This bacterium would cause Li Diao to have endless diarrhea for the next several hundred years. It felt like a long time had passed. After Li Hao's initial punch, there had been no sign of a confrontation, and a lot of people had been waiting anxiously. What's going on? Are we still going to fight? Wang Ling is the weakest in our school's elite class. Why does this Li Diao feel like there's something wrong with the way he's looking at Wang Ling? Could it be that he's scared by Wang Ling's dead fish eyes? Super Chen said, pursing his lips. Just as everyone was wondering what was going on, because of the severe abdominal pain, Li Diao crouched down in front of everyone's stupefied faces. Lord Father, what's wrong? Li Hao bent down in concern. In the next second, Li Diao's expression changed dramatically. No. I can't take it anymore. A fecal yellow substance shot out from his anal flower. It was so powerful that it shocked everyone present. Li Diao was abruptly pushed forward by this tremendous force, and his head hit Li Hao's chin. The impact was so strong that Li Hao's vision went black on the spot, and he fainted. This scene happened too suddenly. Chapter 856. On August 17th, in the face of DG High School's Li Hao and his son's provocation, this farce finally ended with self-humiliation. The most important thing was that Li Hao and his son had really looked too ugly when they lost. And on that day, apart from Li Hao and his son, the people who suffered the most were the cleaning aunties from number 60 high school. Wearing a nose-plug mask, the cleaning aunties cursed 18 generations of Li Hao's ancestors as they cleaned the ground. The yellow excrement on the ground was the product of the combination of the expired crispy noodle snacks Li Diao had eaten and the super bacteria in his stomach. It was actually stickier than ordinary excrement, and stuck to the ground like slime. It also gave off an extremely unpleasant smell. The cleaning aunties used all kinds of talismans to clean the ground, but in the end they didn't achieve very good results. In the end, they could only directly throw the arena away. At the same time, some of the yellow shit had splattered on the ceiling, and even the ceiling had to be torn down. Fortunately, number 60 high school had originally planned to carry out a school renovation this summer break. However, a school renovation was a school renovation. In the face of this kind of bad behavior that seriously affected the order of the competition and ruined the spectator experience, number 60 high school still had to hold DG High School's Li Hao and his son responsible and initiate compensation proceedings. That night, the headmaster of DG High School personally posted an apology video online. However, a lot of netizens didn't buy it, and called for DG High School, a foreign cultivation high school that disrespected local cultivation culture, to be expelled. August 18th. In the headmaster's conference room at DG High School. All the school board members of DG High School were present, including Li Diao, who had an upset stomach yesterday. In fact, Li Diao's stomach was still upset 20 minutes before the start of the meeting. Li Diao had a feeling that the E. coli in his intestine seemed to have become a city spirit. Not a typo, to prevent harmony, also not to reduce the number of words, he felt that his stomach was churning every minute and every second, and it was constantly making gurgling sounds. The headmaster of DG High School and the other school board members were all wearing nose plugs. The headmaster of DG High School was an old man with slick-back silver hair who was dressed very gentlemanly. If Mr. Diao isn't feeling well, he actually doesn't need to attend. He couldn't take it anymore, because Li Diao farted every minute, filling the entire conference room with his smell. Some of the school board members didn't even dare smoke their cigars, because the concentration of the fart was so high that they were afraid the air would explode. Paw! Li Diao gritted his teeth and slapped the table. This won't do. Yesterday, I was too humiliated. I must earn back this face. All right. I'll allow Mr. Dior to join the association, but Mr. Dior, please promise me that you won't be too excited. The headmaster and the school board all stared at Li Diao like he was a bomb, and for a moment, everyone kept their distance from him. When a person is excited, what are the few places where they lose control the most? That's right, anus, especially when he was still suffering from diarrhea. If he got worked up, it was very likely that Li Diao would erupt like a rocket again and repeat the feat in number 60 High's arena yesterday. The principal of DG High School sighed, everyone. What I want to discuss with you now is the issue of student transfer. DG High School has already received a red warning from Huaxiu Alliance, and can no longer continue operating in Huaxiu Nation. Why is it so serious? One of the school board members was puzzled. In the end, we underestimated the risks involved. If we had apologized properly at the beginning, we wouldn't have ended up like this. The gentlemanly headmaster shook his head. There's already no room for redemption. 5 minutes ago, Huaxiu Alliance issued an ultimatum to properly handle the transfer of the students within a month, and to refund the sponsors' fees as well as the students' tuition and miscellaneous fees. When the board members heard this, they all felt relieved, like a deflated balloon. A warning of this scale was unprecedented in history. Furthermore, it was directly issued by Huaxiu Alliance, which directly bypassed the alliance of 10,000 schools. They didn't have the right to negotiate a settlement at all. They had invested a lot of money into DG High School, but no one expected this outcome in the end. Mr. Dior, you should reflect on your son's behavior. Thus, someone put the blame on Li Diao and Li Hao. Someone needed to take the blame for this matter. Otherwise, there was no way to explain it to the bosses of foreign investment consortia. DG High School had just entered Huaxiu Nation's education market not long ago, but had actually fallen into such a tragic situation. Furthermore, the impact was ongoing. Huaxiu Alliance's red notice would also be issued internationally, so their reputation abroad would also be greatly affected. Li Dior's pain was unbearable as he enunciated each word. I didn't think about it, unfortunately. Before he could finish speaking, he clutched his stomach and rushed out again. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he hadn't directly erupted in the conference room, otherwise it would have been scrapped. Seeing Li Dior leave, the headmaster finally said, the foreign consortium actually already has a decision on Mr. Dior's punishment. It's just that Mr. Dior was present just now, so I couldn't agitate him. Everyone should understand, right? Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice. They naturally knew how serious the problem was. If the truth had been brought out when Li Dior was on the verge of exploding just now, he would definitely have erupted on the spot. Currently, the consortium has decided on 2 punishments, which everyone needs to vote on before they are implemented, the headmaster said. What are they? First, send them to Taishu Nation to change their sex and debut as a girl duo. Everyone was shocked. Li Dior still had some capital to change his sex, but Li Hao, after the transformation, he would also be a King Kong Barbie. I object. It hurts my eyes. A school board member raised his hand. I object too. This punishment isn't humane at all. Why do we have to hurt our eyes? Very well. The headmaster nodded. Since 2 school board members have already expressed their opposition, I'll talk about the remaining resolutions. The second resolution is to send Mr. Dior and his son to Lishu Nation's Vampire Control Center and have them deal with the aftermath. However, because of Mr. Dior's unstable stomach condition, the Vampire Control Center has issued a high fee for repairing the damage to the building. Everyone has to bear this cost together. Otherwise, Mr. Dio would have to be sent to one of your houses to live with you. Why should we have to pay? Someone was unconvinced. As soon as he said that, there was a bang in the toilet next to the headmaster's conference room, followed by a violent explosion. The toilet had been blown up by Lee Dior. The headmaster smiled slightly. Does anyone have any objections? The school board members expressed their views one after another. I agree. Me too. Agree. We have to agree. Headmaster is wise. I agree. Headmaster, please contact the consortium tomorrow and send them away. Chapter 857. On the morning of August 18th, Wang Ling was staring at an old iPad on the table, deep in thought. This iPad was the most original version, and was already very old because he had accidentally broken it several times before. It wasn't until Wang Ming had sent him a custom-made wristwatch that he had hidden it under his bed. When he took it out from under the bed, it was already covered in dust, which meant that it hadn't been used for a long time. Dog 2 squatted on the side and looked up. In addition to the iPad, it also saw a golden talisman on the table. With one glance, Dog 2 could tell that this golden talisman wasn't an ordinary object. The heavenly Tao aura on it was so strong that it gave people immense pressure. Gu Xuanji was the person Wang Ling wanted to investigate today. Furthermore, he had to get to the bottom of it. Number 60 high school's transfer assessment had already ended. Lu Qingyi and Wang Jin had been assigned to Fang Xing's class too, but this Gu Xuanji, whom Wang Ling had no idea about, had actually been assigned to his class. Now, there were 16 people in their class. When there were 15 people, Wang Ling could get 8th place. 16 people, how on earth was he going to keep his grades down in the future? Wang Ling felt like his head was hurting. The most important thing was that time Heavenly Tao had already indicated that this was a person from the future. Then, what was this person's purpose in traveling to the present era? Wang Ling had to know the answer. To find out Gu Xuanji's origin, the first thing was to figure out which era he had traveled back from. Based on the Golden Time Talisman that Heavenly Tao had given him, Wang Ling decided to enlighten this old iPad in front of him. The process of enlightening a gremlin was actually very simple, he just needed to bestow it with a Heavenly Tao. However, the process this time was a little more troublesome, because Wang Ling also had to fuse the Golden Time Talisman that Heavenly Tao had given him with it. This was the first time Dog 2 had seen its little masterling enlighten a gremlin, and its eyes went wide. This kind of godly operation was usually very difficult, right? After being enlightened, an ordinary object instantly possessed the ability of a Heavenly Tao at the soul formation stage or above. What kind of godly power was this? But it seemed that enlightening gremlins couldn't be used on humans. Otherwise, Dog 2 thought that Father and Mother Wang would have already been enlightened. In fact, Loopy Toad had asked Father and Mother Wang why they didn't cultivate not long ago. Even if their aptitude wasn't good, given little Masterling's extraordinary means, it was like a fish in water for him to support them in their cultivation. Especially in the modern cultivation society, those second-generation rich kids with poor aptitudes could use medicine to build up their golden core. But Father and Mother Wang, as well as Old Man Wang, seemed to be more relaxed when it came to cultivation. Father Wang later gave Loopy Toad a reason. He asked Loopy Toad a question in return: why did so many people want to become cultivators? Father Wang felt that there were only a few reasons why so many people were still obsessed with cultivation in modern cultivation society, which was an era of peace and no war. First, for the family's benefit. Children of large clans had to embark on the path of cultivation. Furthermore, if one had to consider the issue of future marriage, one's realm was also one of the major conditions for marriage. Only those with a high cultivation realm would be able to give the woman a sense of security, unless you married into the family. Of course, in the Wong clan, there was no such thing as profit. Loopy Toad had already experienced life in the Wong family's small villa for itself. It was very nourishing. Second, for the sake of making one's presence felt. Modern cultivators had an effective national system, and the light forces were officially governed by organizations like Huaxiao Alliance. In the past, bloody battles between sects for the sake of annexing each other no longer existed, and what they had to do now was engage in commercial competition. But in order to show off their strong side, modern cultivators still had places like martial arts centers, such as pet training centers, which were places specially set up by cultivators to show off the spirit beasts under their command. However, this sort of presence didn't exist in the Wong family's small villa. Father and Mother Wong had very clearly instilled in little Master Ling that he should keep a low profile. Then, there was the third and final point that Father Wong had mentioned. For the sake of longevity, it was common knowledge that the higher one's realm, the longer one's lifespan. But this didn't exist in the Wong family, because as long as Father and Mother Wong wanted to live a little longer, Wong Ling could reset their lifespans with a flick of his finger. This ability was similar to erasing the Book of Life and Death. Or if Father and Mother Wong felt that the human world was no longer worth living and wanted to experience what it was like to be buried in peace, they could actually choose to die at any time. If they regretted it, little Master Ling could also be reincarnated. Wong Ling placed the Time Heavenly Tao Golden Talisman on the iPad, and at the same time, golden light shot out of his eyes. At that moment, Wong Ling was choosing a Heavenly Tao. Generally speaking, the Heavenly Tao used to enlighten gremlins was one that Wong Ling rarely used. That was because once a Heavenly Tao was used to enlighten gremlins, the strength of the original body's Heavenly Tao would drop by as much as 50%. However, Wong Ling had the ability to retrieve these gremlins that had been enlightened at any time. At that moment, Wong Ling was once again having difficulty choosing, what Heavenly Tao should he use to enlighten them. Cupping his chin, Wong Ling pondered for 10 minutes. These 10 minutes were often the longest part of the enlightening process. Dog 2 was almost asleep on its stomach when Wong Ling's eyes lit up. He had already made up his mind. The Great Luck Spell. He had decided to fuse this Heavenly Tao with the iPad and enlighten it. Wong Ling raised his sword fingers and tapped the iPad. In a split second, countless golden runes appeared and hovered around his fingertips. These runes flowed from his fingertips into the old iPad, and then visibly, the iPad took on a new look. Then Buttface saw a fish tail grow out of the iPad along with a strand of golden light. After transforming into a spirit, the iPad turned into a black and white koi. The scariest thing was that this koi was as big as a child and could stand on its tail. But the screen is embedded in the belly of the koi fish. Buttface. Wong Ling stared at the enlightened iPad and said telepathically, "Remember your Taoist name, April." "Yes, Master." The koi fish made a sound that sounded a little funny. "Supreme and Honorable Master, please name the iPad in my stomach." Wong Ling lowered his head in thought. He was, in fact, a terrible name maker, random name. Wong Ling stared at the iPad. Then, the screen on the koi fish's belly flashed a few times. 4 words appeared on it, Book of Sage Immortal. This was the koi iPad. Chapter 858. The enlightening process wasn't as complicated as Loopy Toad had imagined. Book of Sage Immortal. Dog 2 pondered the meaning of this name. It vaguely sensed that there was a hint of a Taoist scripture in it. But now that Book of Sage Immortal had little Master Ling's great luck spell, did that mean that this Book of Sage Immortal was extremely lucky? Dog 2 thought that it might be able to use this iPad to buy peripherals or something. This incident gave Buttface a bold idea. But when it came down to it, this actually had something to do with Dog 2's current friend, Wei Ji. In order to raise his own spirit beast, Wei Ji was so poor that he was about to starve to death. Hence, Dog 2 had come up with the rotten idea of having Wei Ji go to the dojo to take on a few more spirit beast challenges, and then Dog 2 would go and buy peripherals, leaving Wei Ji to control the outcome. But Wei Ji couldn't bring himself to do this. After all, if this was discovered, it would greatly affect his reputation, but with this iPad, Dog 2 felt that even if Wei Ji didn't do anything, they could still make money by buying peripherals from other pet trainers. Thinking this, Dog 2 wagged its tail and squatted obediently on the side. It had to behave as well as it could these days, so that it could get little Masterling's approval. It was all for Wei Ji. What was the saying? For a friend, stab a dog in the ribs. Don't hesitate. My lord, please give the order, said Book of Sage Immortal. Wang Ling used his memory sketching spell to quickly sketch out Gu Xuanji's appearance and spoke telepathically to Book of Sage Immortal. 1 minute. I want all the information on this person. Understood, my lord. Just give me 30 seconds. Book of Sage Immortal nodded, and then gave off a golden light, which was very gentle and not dazzling. At the 30th second, the light disappeared. My lord, we have found clues about this person in this universe. Gu Xuanji, from the 7th universe, from the year 5800. According to the timeline, this person is related to Gu Qing, the young master of the ninefold Gu family, and is his legitimate son. 1,400 years later, Wang Ling lowered his head in deep thought. Someone from 1,400 years later, and was indeed related to the domain of the gods. But it was obviously useless to just find out his identity. Wang Ling still didn't know what the other party's objective was. Book of Sage Immortal, my lord, would you like to expand the search area? Buttface was shocked by Buttface's words. It can still be expanded. Woof. This is just information from Universe 7. It doesn't rule out that there are clues about Gu Xuanji in other universes. Book of Sage Immortal replied methodically. According to the information obtained from the timeline, this person's father is very powerful and is the second strongest person in the god realm. The strongest expert was his grandfather, whose Daoist title was Star Lord Gu Yuan. However, Star Lord Gu Yuan had gone on a galactic tour a long time ago, so all the matters of the Gu family were handled by his father, Gu Qing. But according to the current timeline, Gu Qing isn't married yet. Wang Ling sweated. The situation was actually more complicated than he had imagined. Generally speaking, people who travel back to the past from the future are mostly there to correct the mistakes of the past. However, this is risky because after the mistakes of the past are corrected, the order of the future will also be affected. You may have fixed a mistake, but you may have made more mistakes because of it. This was the butterfly effect of Time Heavenly Tao. Wang Ling also had a way to go back in time, but he didn't use it often. Even if he did, he wouldn't choose to go back in time for so long. If he made a mistake, he just had to go back 30 seconds. 1,400 years was indeed a long time. But Gu Qing wasn't married yet, and Gu Xuanji hadn't gone to Ninefold Star after traveling back. Then Gu Xuanji's purpose in coming here, was it for himself? Wang Ling was a little conflicted. Keep investigating. He frowned and spoke telepathically to Book of Sage Immortal. Very well, my lord. This time, I need 5 minutes to search for information on the other 9 universes in one go, said Book of Sage Immortal. Wait. You said Gu Qing is very strong. Then how strong is he? Is he as strong as our little master? Woof. Loopy Toad asked. Book of Sage Immortal was silent, then stared at Loopy Toad with its fish eyes. Gu Qing is also an expert who was born with 3,000 Dao. Loopy Toad was stunned. He was actually born with 3,000 Dao. Were these 3,000 Dao giveaways from supermarkets nowadays? It felt that little Master Ling's strength was already very terrifying. Now there was another Gu Qing. He was also born with 3,000 Dao, but could his strength be similar to little masterling's? But just as Dog 2 thought this, Book of Sage Immortal spoke again. But do you know why I can search for information on the other 9 universes? Loopy Toad shook its head. It indeed didn't understand. Although Dog 2 had mastered the power of Sword Tao, which could also be considered a type of Heavenly Tao, its understanding of Heavenly Tao was in the end much, much shallower than its master's. The only thing it knew was the order of Heavenly Tao. Logically speaking, universes shouldn't interfere with each other. But Book of Sage Immortal could track down clues in other universes, which really shocked Dog 2. Each of the 10 universes has its own order. They have completely different stories. Completely different worlds. There are even some universes where spirit chi is extremely scarce, and ordinary people make up the majority of those universes. Cultivators can only survive in the cracks, said Book of Sage Immortal. Thus, the 3,000 Great Tao of each universe is different. The Great Tao is a product derived from the truth of the universe, and the order of the universe determines the Great Tao itself. Gu Qing was born to be an expert. He was born to stand at the end of the 7th universe and was recognized by it. Thus, he was born with the 3,000 Great Tao. But the Heavenly Tao that Gu Qing mastered was limited to the 7th universe. Speaking up to this point, Dog 2's eyes widened. It seemed that it already knew what Book of Sage Immortal was going to say next. But because the result was so shocking, Dog 2 was completely dumbfounded. Book of Sage Immortal's fish eyes stared at it. So, do you understand? Dog 2 nodded slowly. It seemed to understand a little. In the next moment, Book of Sage Immortal announced its answer. The reason why I can investigate the other universes is because my master doesn't just have the 3,000 Great Tao of the 7th universe. He has the 3,000 Great Tao of the 10 universes. After Book of Sage Immortal said this, Dog 2's fur stood on end. It could only be said, as expected of little Masterling. The 3,000 Great Tao of the 10 universes, what kind of concept was this? Dog 2 found it hard to imagine, except for Dog 2. Wang Ling was also shocked. Because of this. Chapter 859. It turned out that he had been mastering the Heavenly Tao of the 10 universes all along. Looking at his palm, he closed his eyes and thought for a moment. Unlike Gu Qing, he hadn't mastered the 3,000 Heavenly Tao at a very young age. His 3,000 Heavenly Tao had also been acquired bit by bit through memory retrieval, but this kind of memory retrieval was very slow. Wang Ling had only mastered all the Heavenly Tao when he was about 13 or 14 years old. But now, according to Book of Sage Immortal, this mystery seemed to have been solved. Why had his memory retrieval been so slow when he was a child? It was very likely that the Heavenly Tao he had awakened was the Heavenly Tao of the 10 universes. And it was very likely that some kind of fusion had occurred in the process. The Heavenly Tao of the 10 universes was 30,000. Although Wang Ling didn't have a clear understanding of his own strength, it wasn't like he didn't know the number. He was well aware that there were only 3,000 Heavenly Tao in his memory. But there were countless branches under the 3,000 Heavenly Tao, so listening to Book of Sage Immortal now, Wang Ling had a rough deduction. That was, during the process of his memory retrieval, the actual number of Heavenly Tao he had awakened was a whole 30,000. He had awakened the 3,000 Heavenly Tao of the 10 universes in total, but these Heavenly Tao had all been fused. That was to say, although it looked like he had 3,000 Heavenly Tao now, it was actually 30,000. Wang Ling was stunned. Even his mother didn't know that he was so awesome. At that moment, Book of Sage Immortal, who was completely unaware, was still immersed in its own praise. If the heavens hadn't given birth to Lord Ling, all eternity would have been like a long night. Given my Lord's absolute strength, if he has children in the future, they will definitely reach the top when they are born. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched secretly. It was still too far away to talk about children. He didn't have a girlfriend yet, Besides, how could a girlfriend be as delicious as crispy noodle snacks? Wang Ling couldn't be blamed for this. After all, he was only 16 years old now. Indeed, he couldn't imagine himself in the future hugging his child and shouting to everyone he met, "My son Wang Ting has the potential to become a great emperor." 5 minutes later, Gu Xuanji's detailed information was displayed. Wang Ling looked at the information Book of Sage Immortal reported. According to Book of Sage Immortal, in addition to his 7th universe, Gu Xuanji had also been in the 1st and 10th universes. Furthermore, the information on his occupation which Book of Sage Immortal had given him showed, Keeper of Order. Could it be someone who corrected the order? Wang Ling lowered his head in thought. At this moment, Book of Sage Immortal spoke again, "My lord. Can I guess what you're thinking?" Wang Ling nodded. Book of Sage Immortal, Gu Xuanji, who was originally born in Universe 7, is related to Universe 1 and Universe 10, and has the identity of a Keeper of Order. His lord should have already thought about it. Shortly after Gu Xuanji was born in Universe 7, he was recognized by the Heavenly Way Governing Committee and became the controller of the Order of the 3 Universes in order to fix some of the mistakes that had occurred during the development of the universe. Gu Xuanji's return from the future must be to correct some kind of mistake. Of course, I think the wise and mighty Lord has already thought of these things. Wang Ling, Book of Sage Immortal paused, then said, "Gu Xuanji transmigrated to an era before he was born, so this person definitely didn't come for him." According to the data, among the remaining people, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi are the only ones who can be connected to Gu Xuanji. Of course, I'm sure his lord has also thought of this, so I'll get to the main point. Wang Ling, Book of Sage Immortal, according to the data, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi won't have any emotional connection in the future. Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji's father, Gu Qing, will become husband and wife by accident. The child they eventually gave birth to is this Gu Xuanji. According to the data, Wang Zhen's ending was rather tragic. After losing Lu Qingyi, he embarked on an interstellar journey on his own. From this, it can be inferred that Gu Xuanji's transmigration from the future to the present is most likely for the following 3 reasons. First, don't let Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi develop feelings for each other. Second, take the initiative to matchmake Lu Qingyi and her father, Gu Qing. Third, make Wang Zhen stay. Wang Zhen will make an important contribution to the development of Universe 7 in the future. So, he absolutely can't be allowed to go traveling after breaking up with his love. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. So that was what was going on. Book of Sage Immortal, my lord, you must be joking. I've only scratched the surface. My lord's considerations are definitely more thorough. Wang Ling, it was still August 18th, the day of the duel between Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu, the head of Kitchen Knife sect. After several weeks of preparation and special training, Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu had adjusted themselves to a relatively good competitive state. Kitchen Knife sect, led by Jiang Haifu, was a rare up-and-coming sect enterprise in recent decades. Its overall fighting strength might not be as good as that of other sects, but it was so large and had so many disciples that it had a chain effect all over the country. Furthermore, Kitchen Knife sect would soon launch a new franchise model, spreading its sect around the world in the form of a franchise rather than limiting itself to running its own stores. With such a powerful mind, Jiang Haifu's ability to manipulate the entire situation was unquestionable. However, only Jiang Haifu knew that the biggest reason why he could achieve what he had today was because of that recipe that he had inadvertently picked up back then. If it wasn't for that recipe, it would have been very difficult for Kitchen Knife sect to achieve what it was today. But while it was called a duel, the format was actually very simple. In other words, Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu would cook their own dishes in the kitchen. Without revealing who made the dishes, they would let the audience evaluate the taste of the dishes and then give each dish a score. The one with the highest score would win. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu's dishes today had to be completely innovative, and they had to make dishes that had never been made before. This rule was actually set up specifically for Old Man Wang. Ever since the old man came to the Wang family, he had displayed many of his specialties, the most famous of which was the sweet and sour pork ribs made with ji syrup. When Wang Ling went downstairs, he found that there were already a lot of guests at home. It wasn't just the people from the Wang family's small villa who were taking part in the scoring this time. Wang Ming, grenade throwing, Immortal Toya, Little Silver, Xia Yin and Jiang Haifu's son Jiang Bai were also here. In addition, there was Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. It now looked like Book of Sage Immortal's judgment was completely correct. If Gu Xuanji hadn't come, these two would have been a couple all day long. Even if they were enemies, they could develop feelings for each other. But if Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi fell in love with each other in the future, what would be the reason for this? Chapter 860. There were quite a few people at home today. It had been a long time since the Wang family's small villa had been this lively. When Wang Ling went downstairs, he saw Lu Qingyi, Wang Zhen and the others sitting obediently on the sofa. It looked like the two of them had already been warned by people who had visited the Wang family's small villa before. After all, everyone knew that Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang were all hidden big shots, but in fact, whether it was Father Wang, Mother Wang or Old Man Wang, they were all just body refinement cultivators. In this era of national cultivation, body refinement cultivators were no different from ordinary people. At most, they had slightly better strength and physiques. In Wang Ling's opinion, Father Wang's health wasn't any better. He got hemorrhoids every now and then, but he refused to look for Wang Ling because of his pride. In recent years, the only time Father Wang had come to him for magic treatment was for his hair. Last year, in order to rush up the monthly votes list, Father Wang had spent 3 whole months in a row writing 20,000 words a day. The other writers on the website had angrily called him an animal. Staying up late for a long time had also caused Father Wang's hairline to recede without limit. Every time he took a shower, he would grab a bunch of hair, which fell to the floor like noodle soup. Furthermore, because of the dry weather at that time, coupled with his weak body, Father Wang had hemorrhoids due to excessive internal heat and frequent nosebleeds. Therefore, when he was bathing, the falling hair and the dripping blood mixed together. From afar, it looked like a pot of duck vermicelli soup. That year, Father Wang couldn't stand the harassment and finally went to Wang Ling. Wang Ling just raised his finger lightly and touched the spot between Father Wang's eyebrows, and all the abnormalities on Father Wang's body directly disappeared. Although staying up late was a common occurrence for Father Wang now, he had the refreshing cigar the head of state had given him, so he didn't suffer from the after effects of staying up late. But it was easy for people to get hemorrhoids if they stayed up too much. Actually, Wang Ling had a trick that could make Father Wang's hemorrhoids disappear forever. However, this method was a little violent. He had to touch it with his finger. But forget about Father Wang, even Wang Ling himself couldn't bring himself to do it, so he had never brought it up. He reckoned that if he took action, he might not even be able to eat crispy noodle snacks in the future. In the kitchen, Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu were still busy. In order to show fairness, a barrier had been set up outside the kitchen to prevent the cultivators present from peeping into the kitchen. But this barrier couldn't fool Wang Ling's eyes. Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu were now preparing to cook. He saw Jiang Haifu take out a knife. This knife seemed to be made of ice. Under the light, it was crystal clear and extremely translucent. Jiang Haifu held the thick handle of the knife. He pressed the fish with one hand and pierced the ice knife into the fish with the other. He aimed at an angle and pulled. A piece of tight, glossy, and cold fish skin was peeled off by Jiang Haifu. This was an extremely powerful knife technique. It seemed that Jiang Haifu was going to cook fish dishes today. However, on the other side, Old Man Wang seemed to be making a fish dish as well. Today, the two of them were competing with the same theme of the dish. Jiang Haifu peeled off the fish skin and soaked it in clean water. Then, he looked at Old Man Wang, who was also preparing the fish skin. Old Man Wang wasn't using an ice knife, which was already very surprising to Jiang Haifu. The ice knife was the best knife for cooking fish skin, because the temperature of the ice knife was lower than that of a normal kitchen knife. It could preserve the freshness of the fish skin at a low temperature when peeling off the fish skin. At the same time, it would not damage the meat. But the knife Old Man Wang was using was actually a meter-long broadsword. At that moment, Old Man Wang had already taken off his shirt to reveal his old but firm muscles. That was right. Muscles. Old Man Wang had always had muscles. Although Old Man Wang had Alzheimer's a while ago, he had never given up on exercising. Even though he was getting older and his metabolism had slowed down a lot, his body was still full of muscles that even young people would be envious of. Of course, when the old man wore clothes, it was impossible to tell at all. Seeing this, Wang Ling felt a little regretful. If Granny was still alive, she would definitely be very happy. It was a pity that Wang Ling hadn't been born at that time, otherwise Granny Wang would definitely still be alive now. Granny Wang was now in peace. Father Wang knew that Wang Ling had the ability to resurrect her, but he didn't want to disturb her. Back then, Granny Wang had been a famous green flower in the village, and when she passed away, the entire village had come out to send her off. If Granny Wang was casually resurrected, that place would become a ghost village, and it might even attract ghost-catching Taoist priests. Back to business. At that moment, Old Man Wang was like an executioner on the execution ground with a meter-long broadsword in his hand. His face was as calm as an ancient well, but this imposing manner that emanated from the inside out made Jiang Haifu dumbfounded. Then, the old man's eyes narrowed. Like a hunter looking for prey, his gaze was firmly fixed on that plump big fish on the chopping board. The big fish wasn't completely dead yet, and hadn't even been completely scaled off. Its eyes sparkled as it shook its tail desperately on the chopping board, as if to tell others that it could still be saved. But in front of a chef, in the end, this pitiful fish could only become a dish. This was a fish that could make people happy after eating it, so in the eyes of both Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu, it wasn't pitiful at all. Then, the old man's belly bulged slightly, as if he was gathering his strength to breathe in and out. For some reason, even Jiang Haifu felt the temperature drop a few degrees at that moment. Old Man Wang clearly wasn't using an ice blade, but there was a very cold feeling in his heart. The next second, Old Man Wang's eyes widened in silence. Depression sword technique. Then, he chopped down on the chopping board. But this chop wasn't aimed directly at that plump big fish, but stopped 0.0001 centimeters away from the big fish's round and sexy lips. In a flash, the big fish, which had been jumping around and thinking it could still be saved, actually stopped struggling. It didn't even move its tail. Just when Jiang Haifu had yet to understand what Old Man Wang's move was about to do, the big fish actually let out a lament. The next second, the big fish sat up directly on the chopping board, then took off its fish skin and folded it to the side. It was already depressed, and there was no longer the light of hope in the corner of its eyes, there was only a strange light, Jiang Haifu and Wang Ling. Chapter 861. Was this fish sighing just now? Jiang Haifu seriously suspected that there was something wrong with his hearing, but just now, he had indeed seen the fish sit up and take off its skin, as if it had become a city spirit. This was absolutely perfect fish skin, there wasn't the slightest trace of a knife cutting it. Except for the hole at the end, the fish skin was a very smooth and round piece. The best proof was Old Man Wang's next move. The old man tied up the end of the fish skin, and then started to pour water into it. Wang Ling was also stupefied. He had seen the old man cook before, but he had never seen the skill he was displaying today. It seemed that the old man had undergone special training for today's duel, and had even brought out his special skills that he had been hiding for a long time. This opponent was unexpectedly strong. Cold sweat ran down Jiang Haifu's forehead. After washing the fish skin, he used precise knife skills to cut it into strips of uniform width. His fish skin dish was a highly elastic fish skin noodles made of fish skin as the raw material. The most difficult thing about fish skin was actually getting rid of the fishy smell. Most chefs would choose to use spicy condiments such as chili and pepper to cover up the fishy smell. But the truth was that this was a relatively low-class method. Spicy wasn't necessarily suitable for everyone, and the dish this time was for everyone to taste. Thus, the difficulty Jiang Haifu had to overcome was to make this dish so fragrant without using chili. Not only did it have to be devoid of the fishy smell, it also had to have a texture that would appeal to all ages and make people want to eat it again after eating it. The more skilled a chef was, the more they would be able to use the charm of the ingredients themselves to set off each other, cover up their shortcomings, and then bring out the strengths of each ingredient as much as possible. Thus, Jiang Haifu's dish didn't have any condiments. Salt. Message. Pepper noodles. Soy sauce. Ginger garlic and so on, none of these. Jiang Haifu had to extract them from the ingredients themselves. Jiang Haifu did not rely on seasonings. This was also the secret skill that allowed him to roam the Chu world for many years. He gave this secret skill a happy and intimate name, Haifu's family meal. This could be considered Jiang Haifu's signature move. Jiang Haifu had originally considered that the old man beside him was already old, so he might have been able to be a little more modest, so as not to embarrass the old man and cause him to lose too badly. However, after he saw the old man's depression saber technique, Jiang Haifu immediately felt a sense of crisis in his heart. Jiang Haifu did not want to lose this battle. Thinking of this, Jiang Haifu took a deep breath and began to process the other ingredients. Because he didn't know how to use seasonings, he used more ingredients than the old man. Moreover, he only used a part of the ingredients, so he needed to cut off the parts that were used. In this way, knife skills became very important. However, after witnessing the old man's depression saber technique, Jiang Haifu actually felt a little uneasy. When he was processing the other ingredients of the fish skin noodles, he kept sneaking glances at the old man. He wanted to know what other tricks the old man would come up with. On the other side, the old man filled half of the fish skin bags that he had cut with the depression saber technique with water and added some rice inside. There were 12 people in the house today, so he had to try his best to satisfy their appetite. Therefore, the old man used the same method to make another fish skin bag that was exactly the same. Each fish skin bag swelled up like a balloon after being filled with water and rice. It was as big as a cabbage. At this time, Jiang Haifu could also see the significance of the two fish that the old man had carefully selected. The fish that he had seen the old man choose before were all relatively old. Old fish might not have fresh meat, but their skin was very stubborn. Moreover, this fish species was the wave fish, which was one of the more tenacious among the sea fishes. Therefore, the moment he saw the main ingredient, Jiang Haifu thought of the idea of using the wave fish to make fish skin noodles. The old man's train of thought was even more jumpy. He used the fish skin to pour water and rice into it. Was he going to make fish rice? Just as Jiang Haifu was feeling puzzled, a voice suddenly rang out. Old man Wang took out a jar from the cabinet at the bottom. He gently knocked on the jar with his hand. Get up. It's time to work. Then, he opened the jar. Jiang Haifu was surprised to find that there was a yellow and white-orange cat in the jar. This cat's whole body was dissolved in the jar like a liquid. But after hearing Old Man Wang's call, it immediately poked its head out of the jar. Jiang Haifu smelled a strong smell of dried fish in the jar. It was probably left in the jar by the old man for the orange cat to eat. The orange cat stretched out its paws lazily, then jumped out and landed on the ground. Then, it stood up on its 2 legs. "Old man, this is a cat from my hometown. I picked it up on a tricycle a while ago. It's a cat that can cook." The old man scratched his head and smiled. "I'm old and can't punch 80 punches per second anymore, so I asked this vegetable cat to help me. Brother Haifu, do you mind?" Jiang Haifu quickly waved his hand. Of course not, please go ahead, old man." He was almost 80 years old. This competition was actually not very fair to begin with. The old man massaged his muscles, then took out something from his pocket and threw it to the orange cat on the ground. Jiang Haifu looked at it and found that it was a pair of super small boxing gloves. What was he going to do? Stunned, Jiang Haifu watched as the old man hung the fish skin pouches, which were previously filled with water and rice, on a bamboo pole with a hook. He placed the bamboo pole horizontally in front of his chest, and the 2 fish skin pouches were suspended in the air just like that. Then, the old man narrowed his eyes and stared at the orange cat. "Vegetable cat. Use Muay Thai warning." At his command, the orange cat abruptly punched the 2 fish skin bags. In a split second, the whole kitchen was filled with the sound of "ah, hit 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 hit." Jiang Haifu and Wang Ling were stunned. As a chef for many years, Jiang Haifu finally understood what on earth this cat was doing. This vegetable cat was using its skillful punching skills to rub the air around the fish skin bags to heat up the air at a uniform speed. Furthermore, it was using the vibration of the high-speed punches to extract the salt from the fish skin bags and fuse it with the rice inside. This was a one-step operation to enhance the flavor. It wasn't using any condiments, but it wasn't using any extra ingredients either. Jiang Haifu realized he had lost again. Chapter 862. Old Man Wang was undoubtedly a strong opponent. Jiang Haifu regretted his previous behavior of underestimating his opponent. Compared to Old Man Wang, he was obviously not prepared enough. If he had known earlier, he would have reviewed the Record of Divine Cuisine before coming here. This was an ancient book that he accidentally found back then, the author of which was unknown. But it was also because of this ancient book that Jiang Haifu had the achievements he had today. "I thought of a recipe, but I forgot it. Can I ask for help outside?" Jiang Haifu was stunned and said. "As you wish, Brother Haifu." Old Man Wang smiled slightly. "I also invited this vegetable cat as external help. If Brother Haifu has forgotten the recipe, you can go and investigate it. As you get older, you will always forget some things." When Old Man Wang said this, Jiang Haifu's face was boiling hot. For a chef, it was actually a shame to forget his own recipe. The most important thing was that the Record of Divine Cuisine was not written by Jiang Haifu himself. In fact, the fish skin noodles dish today was also not Jiang Haifu's idea. It was also from this Record of Divine Cuisine recipe. Jiang Haifu was a person who cared a lot about winning or losing. He thought that he could win this match beautifully, but Old Man Wang's 2 consecutive tricks directly made him dumbfounded. He even forgot his own formula. Sometimes, people would have intermittent amnesia. Perhaps everyone had the same experience, that is, when talking to a person, they originally wanted to ask a question, but when the words were on the tip of their tongue, they directly forgot the question they wanted to ask before. Jiang Haifu spent 2 minutes on the phone and asked his wife to send him the PSD format file of Record of Divine Cuisine to his mobile phone. Record of Divine Cuisine had been made into an electronic file. Because the paper of the old classic had turned yellow, Jiang Haifu had to spend a lot of money every year to carry out maintenance and repair work on the original. Now, Jiang Haifu did not even dare to touch this classic because every page turned would cause damage to the classic. So a long time ago, Record of Divine Cuisine had already been made into a PSD format by Jiang Haifu's team. However, this PSD file was extremely hidden, and Jiang Haifu had never made it public. Even his wife had to go deep into the computer files under Jiang Haifu's instructions over the phone. Finally, she found it in an encrypted and locked folder named Kushuan is Really Handsome. Soon, Jiang Haifu received a PSD file from his wife on his phone. Similarly, this document was also locked. Only Jiang Haifu knew about it. Jiang Haifu was searching for the recipe for fish skin noodles. Because the recipe in the Record of Divine Cuisine was similar to a notebook, there were no related notes. Jiang Haifu could only rely on his own memory to find the approximate location. At this moment, Old Man Wang said, 818. Jiang Haifu was stunned. He flipped to page 818, and it turned out that the content on this page was really about the creative cooking of fish skin noodles. Jiang Haifu was dumbfounded. Jiang Haifu said, Old Master, you, Old Man Wang chuckled. When I saw Brother Haifu's fish skin noodle dish, it reminded me of a recipe that I wrote casually when I was young. I've already forgotten the name. However, he still remembered the page number. It was page 818. And it's the same number as the day of our competition today. Is this a coincidence? Jiang Haifu was stunned. You wrote it when you were young. When? Old Man Wang said, probably when I was 13 or 14 years old. At that time, I liked to let my imagination run wild all day long. While working as an apprentice, I had the idea of writing. Jiang Haifu said, writing. Yes. Writing. Old Man Wang recalled, writing always requires material. Without material, you can't make up a story. Then, I began to make up recipes. I planned to use the recipes as material in the story after I finished making them. Unexpectedly, the more I made up, the more I made up. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang said, in the end, before I could finish writing, I was specially recruited to be a head chef. After that, I never wrote again. And I don't know where this recipe went. Then, coincidentally, when I was in my 40s, I entered Kikari restaurant and found that many of the dishes inside were exactly the same as the ones in my recipe. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang, that Kikari restaurant was a new store, and it wasn't very famous at the time. When I saw the dishes, it was like I had returned to when I was a teenager. At that time, I was so moved. I felt that this was definitely fate. It's all fate. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang, Brother Haifu. This fish skin noodles of yours is also the link of fate between us. Speaking up to this point, Jiang Haifu simply wanted to cry. Old man, please don't call me Brother Haifu. You can just call me Haiwa. Jiang Haifu really did want to cry. He had been looking for the owner of the recipe for so many years. He never thought that it would actually be this Old Man Wang in front of him. Furthermore, he had made it up when he was 13 or 14. Where on earth did this immortal come from? At that moment, there was only one thought in Jiang Haifu's mind. He wanted to admit defeat. Elsewhere, Mo Immortal Castle, which had already been incorporated into the Office of Strategic Deception, had an unexpected guest. This person was none other than Gu Xuanji, a transfer student who had just joined number 60 high school not long ago. Gu Xuanji didn't hide his sincerity at all, and very generously placed a tetrahedron crystal on the table. The Lord and Lady turned pale with fright when they saw this. The Tesseract of the Universe. This was a super rare material, several grades higher than primordial black crystal. Gu Xuanji's expression was very serious. This is my offer, and I only want information. The Lord rubbed his hands together. Then, what kind of information would you like to buy, sir? You can buy anything you want at this price. That's good. Gu Xuanji nodded. I want information on a person. The Lord, who is it? Does he have a Daoist name? Gu Xuanji nodded again. Yes. After saying that, Gu Xuanji slapped a photo on the table. The Lord and Lady looked at each other in astonishment when they saw the person in the photo. Because the person in the photo wasn't anyone else, it was the current leader of the Office of Strategic Deception Spirit Medicine Team, Immortal Toya. Why did this person want information on Immortal Toya? The Lord and Lady were stupefied. When all was said and done, as the core of the Office of Strategic Deception, Immortal Toya was now the Lord and Lady Superior. How would they dare sell information on their leader? The Lord broke out in a sweat and stared at Gu Xuanji. Sir, wait a moment. I have to go ask. But as soon as the Lord said this, Gu Xuanji's hand was already on his shoulder. Wait. The Lord. Gu Xuanji, he's your superior. The Lord and Lady were startled again. This person could read minds. Then that's easy. Gu Xuanji smiled faintly. You only have two choices now. First, take the universe's Rubik's Cube and sell me the information. Second, refuse the deal and let me look through your memories. The Lord gritted his teeth. He never thought that such a troublesome person would actually turn up today. Genius 1 second remember website URL. Mobile version, M. Chapter 863. At that moment, the Lord and the Lady were drenched in cold sweat. The man in front of them was extremely tricky to deal with. He had a head of gray hair and the dignified temperament of a young master from an aristocratic family. He looked like an elegant gentleman, but his eyes were full of murderous intent. It was as if a knife was hidden in his smile, which was pressed against the Lord and the Lady's necks. The Lord and the Lady were a little familiar with this oppressive force. It couldn't be wrong. This oppressive force was the same as the one Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had given them. The Lord and the Lady broke out in a cold sweat and didn't know what to do. At that moment, Gu Xuanji frowned slightly as he stared at the Lord and the Lady. You. Gu Xuanji was astonished to realize that his mind-reading ability had unexpectedly failed. He could use the mind-reading ability to read anyone's mind, but just now, he had actually seen the Lord and the Lady's minds go blank. With the combat power of these two people, he could easily crush them to death like ants. Therefore, it was impossible for them to resist on their own. Gu Xuanji thought that these two people were probably thinking about something that had a restriction on them, which was preventing him from reading their minds. Could it be that they were thinking about Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi? But given their current strength, they weren't a threat to him at all. As a keeper of order who had returned to the past from the future, he should be far stronger than anyone else in this era, including his father Gu Qing. But why was that so? Gu Xuanji thought it was very strange. Could it be that in this world, there are factors that exist in blind spots? Looking at Gu Xuanji's increasingly gloomy expression, the Lord and the Lady broke out in a cold sweat. They didn't even dare communicate telepathically, for fear that Gu Xuanji would read something else. A moment later, the Lord gave the Lady a meaningful look. Mr. Gu, please wait a moment. I'll have the Lady go get the information. Of course, he couldn't hand over all of Immortal Toya's information. It was a fake document, and apart from Immortal Toya's name and basic information, the rest of the information was Fang Xing's personal history. This was the emergency plan that the Office of Strategic Deception had drawn up for the intelligence team. If they really ran into a problem that they couldn't handle, they could activate this contingency plan. He handed over a fake document and pushed the matter to the thugs. When the time was right, he would inform the thugs. The Lord and Lady of the castle had already practiced this emergency operation countless times to make the entire handover look very smooth. Back then, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had specially asked Wang Ling's clone, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, to supervise it. The Lord and Lady could already hand over fake information without any distracting thoughts. Therefore, Gu Xuanji's mind reading did not detect any abnormalities at this time, a wise choice. Gu Xuanji nodded with satisfaction. Please take this USB drive, Mr. Gu. The lady handed it over with both hands. All right. Gu Xuanji nodded. With a twist of his body, he transformed into a mass of nothingness and disappeared on the spot. He's finally gone. The Lord and Lady heaved long sighs of relief. The lady, what should we do next? Let's report to the sect leader first. This person is too dangerous. The Lord looked at the Tesseract cube on the table. A lot of people regard a high-level material like the Tesseract cube as a priceless treasure. A long time ago, there was even an almighty called Huoba who waged war over it. Huoba? That's right. The Lord nodded. He also has a younger brother called Yiba. This person actually casually took out the Tesseract cube in exchange. His strength is unfathomable. After receiving the USB drive, Gu Xuanji was still very concerned about what had just happened. He felt like he had missed something. Were there other strong experts in this world that he didn't know about? After he left the Lord's building, he went to a place, the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. When Gu Xuanji appeared here, the 6 great Heavenly Tao all looked at him. A keeper of order. Why had a keeper of order suddenly appeared here? Gu Xuanji stared at the great Heavenly Tao. Your Excellency's Heavenly Tao of Universe 7, I have to trouble you. I need to investigate someone. Sure, fill out the form first. Strength Heavenly Tao nodded as a representative and threw out a golden scroll. Since when do we need to fill out a form? Gu Xuanji was stunned. He remembered that the future Universe 7 didn't have this rule. The rules of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee of the 10 universes are different. Every period has different rules. If you want to investigate someone, you have to fill out the form first, Time Heavenly Tao replied. I see. Then thank you very much, Your Excellency's Heavenly Tao. Gu Xuanji took the scroll with both hands and filled it out seriously. In the end, the questions on it made Gu Xuanji blank. Questionnaire Survey Question 1. Is your favorite snack crispy noodle snack? Gu Xuanji. Questionnaire Survey Question 2. Which of the following is the correct way to eat crispy noodle snacks? 1. Crush it and sprinkle seasoning packets. 2. Soak it in water. 3. Sprinkle isitis root. 4. Use seaweed to wrap the crispy noodle snack. Gu Xuanji. Questionnaire Survey Question 3. If the crispy noodle snack and your girlfriend fell into the water, which one would you save first? Gu Xuanji. There were still a lot of questions, a total of 999 questions. Of course, all of this was the Heavenly Tao deliberately stalling for time. Because Time Heavenly Tao had already noticed that this keeper of order was the person Wang Ling had been investigating, and given that this person's behavior was suspicious, the 6 great Heavenly Tao had unanimously decided to stall for time. Thus, while Gu Xuanji was answering the questions, the 6 great Heavenly Tao of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee had all moved to the spare conference room, leaving only their clones behind to deal with Gu Xuanji. Strength Heavenly Tao. This isn't good, this person has actually come knocking on our door. Time Heavenly Tao, as expected of a keeper of order. He didn't hesitate at all when filling out the questionnaire. People who fill out questionnaires at such a rapid pace are usually very scary. There are 999 questions in the questionnaire. But at this rate, it shouldn't take long. Spirit Heavenly Tao. What is the Keeper of Order's purpose in coming back from the future? Time Heavenly Tao. Gu Xuanji is the Keeper of Order in charge of 3 universes. For the time being, we don't have the authority to investigate his purpose, but it definitely has something to do with His Excellency Ling. At this time, the best option is for His Excellency Ling to come forward. Death Heavenly Tao. In that case, what are we waiting for? Strength Heavenly Tao nodded. Quickly, go invite Buddha Wang Ling. Chapter 864. X to the power of 8 Z yin ad-free update fastest new August 1st Chinese Xiaoshuanet. If it had been anyone else who had so brazenly investigated Wang Ling, the six great heavenly Tao would have mercilessly joined forces to directly suppress them and kick them out of the heavenly Tao governing committee. But Gu Xuanji's identity was very special, as he was the keeper of order for 3 entire universes. Similarly, he was also one of the heavenly Tao's whitelist users, although his specific ranking was far lower than Wang Ling's. That was right, the heavenly Tao whitelist also had a ranking system. Even after being added to the list, the heavenly Tao would rank them according to their contribution to the universe. Gu Xuanji's ranking actually wasn't low, but compared with Wang Ling, there was still a lot of room for improvement. Not everyone was qualified to be on the whitelist. For example, Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen weren't qualified, so, if Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were used as a yardstick, a lot of people had already been directly eliminated. Thus, while Gu Xuanji was filling out the information, Wang Ling, who had received the news, sent a clone to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. Since the Wang family's small villa was still in the middle of a cooking duel, Wang Ling's real body had to stay there. However, this clone he had sent out was a serious clone, which was even stronger than Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch's clone, which had its own consciousness and wouldn't disappear. Thus, Wang Ling had specially added the word serious in front of this clone. This was a show of respect for the opponent. Wang Ling had always wanted to know the limits of his power. Although he had learned from Book of Sage Immortal about the origin of his 3,000 Great Tao, the truth was that he had always felt that his 3,000 Great Tao wasn't as powerful as he had imagined. The only problem was that he couldn't control it. He was only 16 years old. If he was given 16,000 years of cultivation, he was confident that he could master them all. Even if it wasn't 16,000 years, even if it was 1,600 years, the situation would still be much better than it was now. Gu Xuanji was a person born in the domain of the gods, and in the future he would become the keeper of order of the universe. Such a person shouldn't be too weak. At that moment, when Wang Ling's serious clone appeared in the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee's Heavenly Tao space, Gu Xuanji had already reacted. He put down the questionnaire in his hand and smiled. Sure enough, answering questions is just a stall for time. The clones of the 6 great Heavenly Tao immediately turned into nothingness, leaving the Heavenly Tao space to the 2 of them. Although the true bodies of the 6 great heavenly Tao felt that it would be better to create another subspace, with the strength of these 2 people, if they were to fight here, it would very likely affect the spatial order of the neighboring universe. However, it was too late to say anything now. The 6 great heavenly Taos did not want to be involved in this battle. Gu Xuanji twisted his face to stare at Wang Ling's serious clone, and was stunned by its face. He never thought that such a figure whom the 6 great heavenly Tao revered so much would actually be his classmate from number 60 high. When he entered number 60 high school back then, his initial goal hadn't been to get close to Wang Ling, but to get close to Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. After learning that these 2 wanted to mingle in a foundation establishment high school, he had decided to take the transfer exam together. But Gu Xuanji had never imagined that there would be such a person hidden by his side. And most importantly, he hadn't sensed anything at all. Gu Xuanji's expression turned serious as he started to size up Wang Ling. The youngster in front of him looked ordinary, but gave him an astonishing sense of pressure. In fact, there weren't many people who could give him pressure. The keepers of order in the other universes all had some skill, and Gu Xuanji had been fortunate enough to exchange pointers with them. None of the keepers of order could give him a faint sense of fear just from the sound of their own breathing before they had even started fighting. If he had to say that there was, it would be his father, Gu Qing, but in this era, his father Gu Qing wasn't that strong yet. We keepers of order have a list of the strongest people in the universe, and you're not on it. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling with a solemn expression. Since you're not on the list, you're a lawbreaker, and should be eliminated. He was trying to get information out of him. Gu Xuanji was well aware that since Wang Ling wasn't on the list, there had to be some special circumstances that he didn't know about. Looking at how scared the 6 great heavenly Dao were, he was actually already well aware of what was going on. Wang Ling's identity and background were probably more complicated than he had imagined. Although Gu Xuanji had a solemn expression on the surface, his heart was actually filled with excitement. Duels and challenges with all the experts could give him a sense of excitement. Wang Ling, because they were now in the heavenly Dao space, which was an absolutely fair space, there was no problem of overlapping timelines. Now, Wang Ling could hear Gu Xuanji's thoughts as usual. This guy was also a drama queen. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling in silence. He had clearly provoked him just now. The other party had actually been able to keep his composure and not make the first move. Gu Xuanji felt even more excited. Only a big shot could have this kind of steady bearing. What should he do? Should he make the first move? No, he absolutely couldn't make the first move. What if the other party saw through his serious expression but was actually very excited inside? That would be unbecoming of a keeper of order. Gu Xuanji lowered his head and started to release his aura to test Wang Ling. He released 50% of his aura. But after dozens of seconds, the other party actually didn't even frown. Gu Xuanji became even more excited. The pressure of his aura actually had no effect on the other party. It seemed that the other party's strength was far beyond what he had imagined. When he fought, he could let loose to his heart's content and no longer be restrained. When he had fought with several keepers of order from other universes, Gu Xuanji had suppressed his nature countless times, because compared with his overall fighting strength, those keepers of order were still a little weaker. Now, finally, he had met someone who could fight. The corners of Gu Xuanji's mouth curled up slightly, and then he quickly covered his mouth with his hand. Damn it, he was so excited that he couldn't stop the corners of his mouth from curling up. Keeper of order. You dare fight me? Gu Xuanji said in a low voice as he stared at Wang Ling's serious clone in front of him. His face was flushed with excitement, and his blood was boiling all over as wisps of steam erupted from his body. Before the fight, I need to make something clear. I'm not excited. Absolutely not. Not at all. Wang Ling finally understood. This guy was a tsundere, old Tai, set a small goal first. Chapter 865. Gu Xuanji was thoroughly excited. Wang Ling could see steam emanating from the other party's body. When some cultivators became excited when they were full of spirit energy, it was very easy for them to produce this type of spirit energy steam. Specifically, their skin would turn red, steam would come out of their pores, their adrenal glands would surge, and their spirits would be highly excited. There were no downsides to this phenomenon, and on the contrary, it would make a cultivator more focused in battle. Furthermore, it would greatly increase their explosive power, speed, strength, and toughness. At sea, there was a group of pirates who called this second gear, and the leader of that group of pirates had developed third gear and fourth gear as a foundation. However, this phenomenon of spiritual energy steam had only appeared on a very small number of people. In modern society, most cultivators could only rely on the medicinal power brought about by taking drugs to produce this phenomenon, but Gu Xuanji produced it on his own without the assistance of any drugs. This was enough to prove Gu Xuanji's cultivation foundation. This man was very strong. He was even stronger than Immortal Jin Yuan and Demon Saint second-generation Merman. Wang Ling wouldn't know exactly how strong he was until he actually fought them. But based on what he could see now, he was probably several dozen times stronger. After all, he was a keeper of order who maintained order in 3 universes, so it made sense that Gu Xuanji had this kind of strength. Wang Ling took a deep breath. He was just curious about the attitude of this battle. After all, there had never been a battle between a keeper of order. And Gu Xuanji probably represented the highest level of fighting strength among the keepers of order. If he couldn't even defeat Gu Xuanji's clone, Wang Ling would be very disappointed. The moment Wang Ling's dead fish eyes turned serious as he stared at Gu Xuanji received a signal. He knew that the battle had already begun. There was no need for too much communication in a showdown between the strong. Although I don't know your exact identity, you mustn't underestimate me. Gu Xuanji grinned slightly, but then quickly suppressed it, because he was too excited. His bad habit of baring his teeth slipped out again. He smiled without showing his teeth. As a keeper of order, he should be serious, otherwise it didn't match his style at all. Wang Ling tilted his head, and at that moment, fine strands of hair flew out of Gu Xuanji's hair like dragons to linger around him. Then, Gu Xuanji shouted softly, and the strands of hair actually intertwined, forming several chains. This was Gu Xuanji's personal magic treasure, the 3,000 chains of order. It was a chain refined directly from his hair. It could pierce through the void, and it was extremely flexible and restrictive. When Wang Ling saw this scene, he couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. In the end, he was the strongest among the keepers of order, and his methods were indeed different. The overall combat power of this 3,000 chains of order had already surpassed that of a world-defying artifact, and it was estimated to be about the same as an 8th-grade divine artifact. However, Gu Xuanji's strength should not be limited to just this. This magic treasure was just a test. Many cultivators chose to use their own skin and hair to refine magic treasures. For example, Miss Ozwa had once appeared and refined her own fingernails. Another example was a famous eye refiner in the cultivation circle, Taoist Wu Yu. This person was famous for refining his own eye power, and his eye power was extraordinary. He could weaken everyone into legal elitists and increase his own combat power by weakening the enemy. However, the above choices were relatively normal. Whether it was the nails or the eyes, they were relatively easy to control. Only the hair was different. Because there were so many strands of hair, it wasn't easy to refine. Furthermore, it usually had to be refined one strand at a time, and even if it was successfully refined, it was extremely difficult to operate. Gu Xuanji's ability to refine 3,000 strands of hair into his personal magic treasure was enough to prove that he had extremely high control over his spirit energy. Wang Ling was actually someone who didn't find it hard to admit that others were outstanding. He would usually analyze the strengths of his opponents. Respect for your opponent would make you more humble. Furthermore, there was another advantage to listing out strengths, and that was that when Wang Ling won, it would comfort him. These strengths would tell Wang Ling that his opponent wasn't weak, it was that he was too strong. Even Wang Ling himself didn't know why he was so strong. Take this. At that moment, Gu Xuanji's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling. He stretched out his hand, and the 3,000 chains of order behind him actually pierced through the void in the blink of an eye to attack Wang Ling's hands and feet. Wang Ling frowned as he realized that he couldn't follow the trajectory of the chains. The chains of order don't pass through the surface space. Wang Ling murmured in his heart as he realized something unexpected. And that was that the space the chains themselves relied on wasn't the surface space, but the space of the universe. Gu Xuanji used his power as a keeper of order to actually link his personal magic treasure to 3 universes at the same time. Simply put, when the strands of hair pierced through the void, they had to make a turn in another universe before coming back here. Only a divine artifact could penetrate space like this. Thus, when the chains of order successfully passed through the void space, Wang Ling's serious clone couldn't catch them at all, and he instantly fell into Gu Xuanji's trap. Outside the battlefield, the 6 great heavenly Dao were also watching. This showdown was no different from a fight between immortals. Every move and every technique seemed to be filled with the vast divine might of heavenly Dao. Strength heavenly Dao, this Gu Xuanji actually has the upper hand. Time heavenly Dao, the battle hasn't really started yet, and even His Excellency Ling's clone isn't that easy to deal with. But given Gu Xuanji's current fighting strength, I'm afraid His Excellency Ling won't be able to deal with him with just a few simple slaps. One by one, the other Heavenly Dao nodded in agreement. After all, Gu Xuanji represented the strongest fighting force of a keeper of order. At that moment, the chains of order were wrapped around Wang Ling's wrists and ankles, and the pressure of hundreds of Heavenly Dao on each chain firmly restrained his movements. Success. There was doubt in Gu Xuanji's eyes, but he didn't slack off in the slightest. He didn't believe that the youngster in front of him only had this kind of strength. But at the same time, Gu Xuanji was also a little vexed. He had already used his personal magic treasure, but was he still unable to force the youngster to use it to fight him? In a duel between two cultivators, when one side took out his natal magical equipment, the other side also had to take out his natal magical equipment. Even if they didn't intend to use their natal magical equipment to fight, it was still necessary to take out their natal magical equipment. This was out of courtesy. Of course, it wasn't that Wang Ling was being impolite by not using his personal magic treasure. Furthermore, his natal magic treasure was meant to be eaten. As for what a personal magic treasure was, everyone knew in their hearts. Wang Ling had already eaten today's set of life-bonded magic treasures. Chapter 866. As everyone knew, Wang Ling had to make an appointment in advance to take out his life-bonded magic treasure. But even if he could make an appointment, there actually wasn't anyone who could make him take out his magic treasure. Because for Wang Ling, almost every battle could be settled with a few slaps. If he couldn't settle it, he would just slap them a few more times. But he couldn't use such a simple and crude method to deal with Gu Xuanji in front of him. The other party was a keeper of order, and also one of the most powerful among them. Wang Ling had to take the other party's face into consideration. Wang Ling considered himself a considerate person, although he currently didn't have a girlfriend. When Lotus Sun had taken a fancy to him back then, it had only been a short-lived passion, hadn't it stopped after he ignored her? Thus, even Wang Ling himself wasn't sure whether a girl would really like him. Even with the mind-reading ability, he couldn't tell if a girl's attitude toward him was just a momentary misconception. With his rather unsociable personality, it was actually very hard for him to attract people, right? You have to concentrate in a fight, how can you daydream? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling with his hands on his hips. He deliberately tightened the chains of order, but the boy in front of him didn't seem to feel any pain, and didn't even frown. A few seconds later, he felt the boy's pupils change. Gu Xuanji had never felt such immense pressure before. The young man's eyes turned crimson, and they looked like petals of a flower. A very strong ocular power fell upon the substance chains. Gu Xuanji's scalp went numb, and his hair stood on end. Very powerful eye power. Gu Xuanji had never seen this kind of power before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the strongest in the world. Without using any eye techniques, the boy could rely on his own eye power to bring about such oppression. It was truly shocking. Bzzzt. In the next moment, Gu Xuanji clearly felt the chains of order being activated by a powerful force. On the young man's arms and body, a complete set of spirit armor was born out of spirit energy. This was spirit armor composed of highly dense spirit energy molecules, and Gu Xuanji had no choice but to withdraw the chains of order for the time being. As a godly weapon, the chains of order weren't without their natural enemies. After all, they were refined from hair, and were very afraid of dealing with highly dense spirit energy molecules. If Gu Xuanji stayed in this environment for too long, his hair would dry up and become greasy. There was a wound in his hair. If the quality of the hair was damaged, the power of the chains of order would be greatly reduced. Of course, under normal circumstances, the chains of order weren't afraid of high-density spiritual energy molecules. After all, as Gu Xuanji's life-bonded magic treasure, the chains of order could even travel through space freely. How could ordinary high-density spirit energy molecules affect his chains of order? In the Cultivation Encyclopedia, the unit of spiritual energy was yards. In a cubic meter of space, anything with a spiritual energy density of more than 1,000 yards would be classified as a high-density spiritual energy molecular substance. Meanwhile, when the 1,000-yard, 1 cubic meter molecular sphere exploded, the resulting explosion was no less powerful than a high-explosive grenade. Take the Old Devil and General E for example. The Old Devil's famous skill, Chaos Ball, and General Yi's famous skill, Palm Sword, were spells that relied on the theory of high-density molecular compression. The Old Devil's Chaos Ball could reach a density of 1 million to 2 million. General Yi's Palm Sword, on the other hand, was stable at around 2 million. In general space, the pressure produced by traveling through space and time was about 10 million spiritual energy molecules. Gu Xuanji's chains of order could travel freely through space and withstand the pressure of up to 20 million spiritual energy molecules. As a keeper of order, Gu Xuanji's chains of order had a clear analytical ability, and could visualize all matter it touched. Just now, Gu Xuanji had chosen to take the chains of order back because he had seen a string of numbers on Wang Ling's spirit energy molecular armor that he didn't understand. Because there were too many digits, Gu Xuanji hadn't even had time to count them clearly, and had immediately taken the chains of order back. The 6 great heavenly Tao couldn't help sighing with emotion as they watched the battle from the outside. The power of the chains of order is already beyond imagination, but His Excellency Ling's King's Eye is even better. Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. The King's Eye has the power to see through the essence of the universe, and its power can be used to construct spirit armor, which has an extremely strong defense. But as the strongest combatant among the keepers of order, Gu Xuanji's observation skills are nothing to scoff at. As soon as His Excellency Ling summoned his spirit armor, he immediately withdrew the chains of order. His reflexes are indeed formidable, said Time Heavenly Tao. Spirit Heavenly Tao laughed. It's just entertainment to begin with. As the keeper of order of the 3 great universes, Gu Xuanji isn't careless in his work, and he's an extremely hardworking person. We've already praised His Excellency Ling to the point where we don't want to praise him anymore, so it's better to praise the keeper of order. Although he's indeed a lot weaker than His Excellency Ling, it's already not easy for him to do this much. He deserves praise. Not bad, not bad. He deserves praise. The other heavenly Tao nodded in agreement. But after this battle was over, they decided to have Gu Xuanji stay behind to renovate the Heavenly Tao Committee's conference room, a showdown between the universe's most powerful keeper of order and the dimension's most powerful man. It wasn't like there was nothing to see. The great heavenly Tao all thought in their hearts that after this showdown, their conference room would be torn to pieces. After the spirit armor was summoned, Gu Xuanji tried a lot of things. What Earth's embrace of the heavenly stars? What divine skyquake? What myriad Earth attraction? What spiraling mass? All of them were actually unable to shake this spiritual armor at all. Those could be said to be destructive attacks. In the past, when he fought against a keeper of order, it would be too late for him to dodge after seeing them, but now, these skills couldn't even scratch the surface of this spiritual armor. This was too domineering. Ordinary spells had no way of dealing with this kind of defense. So, did he have to use a super spell? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling and frowned slightly. He saw that Wang Ling was also deep in thought. Could it be that the other party was also thinking about how to deal with him? On the other side, Wang Ling, who was wrapped up in the impenetrable spirit armor summoned by the King's Eye, was indeed frowning slightly. He hadn't summoned the spirit armor on purpose, because he knew that once the spirit armor was summoned, most of Gu Xuanji's attacks would be blocked. But heaven knew that after his King's Eye was activated, it actually had an automatic mechanism to protect its clone, and had directly wrapped him up in spirit armor. He was indeed thinking. He was thinking about how to cancel the spirit armor. Chapter 867. Wang Ling was well aware that if he couldn't deactivate the spirit armor, this battle wouldn't continue. Gu Xuanji was very strong, but no matter what, he couldn't break through the King's Eye's absolute defense. But to be able to force the King's Eye to activate the spirit armor's absolute defense, Gu Xuanji's strength indeed couldn't be underestimated. In previous battles, no one had ever been able to do this. Even Wang Ling himself didn't know that the spirit armor would automatically activate when the King's Eye thought that its clone might be in danger. So how to deactivate it was the problem Wang Ling now faced. After studying it for several dozen seconds, Wang Ling decided to give up. He decided to use a more convenient method. Thus, he opened the Mission Manager, in his mind, selected King's Eye, and all the expansion options under the King's Eye, and then End Program. In almost an instant, the spiritual armor was deactivated. This was a very efficient method, and Wang Ling often did it when deactivating certain spells. Of course, there were some spells that had a time limit, such as the Great Fortune spell, which couldn't be deactivated after it was activated, and could only be deactivated after the activation time was up. But, it was finally deactivated. Wang Ling heaved a long sigh of relief. When all was said and done, the other party was a dedicated keeper of order. In the end, even the spiritual armor could not be broken. As a keeper of order, how desperate must the other party be? As a kind person, Wang Ling felt that he should be more considerate of others. Deactivated the spirit armor. Gu Xuanji saw that the armor wrapped around the youngster's body had disappeared. He couldn't help showing an unhappy expression. Was this a provocation? Or was he simply looking down on him? Gu Xuanji was a little annoyed. He had fought so many experts in the universe, but no one had ever shown him this kind of attitude. He had once defeated a giant fatty with incredibly thick arms, who liked to wear gloves studded with non-mainstream gems, and whose chin was wrinkled like a tray of soup dumplings. He had once defeated a person with 2 pointy ears and a purple body that looked like an alien kangaroo. That person also had a follower by his side. At that time, Gu Xuanji had single-handedly fought against 2 people. He had also defeated a muscular brother who liked to wield an electric hammer, and who had a younger brother surnamed Luo. Although his younger brother wasn't his biological son, this muscular brother doted on him very much. At that time, this brother had raised an electric hammer called Wang Dachui and caused him a lot of trouble, but in the end, Gu Xuanji still won the match. When they shook hands, Brother Gue finally said his name. He said that his name was a single character, Xia. He traveled the universe, maintained order, and defeated countless experts, but in this battle with Wang Ling. But it gave him a completely different feeling. I'm going to get serious. He stared at Wang Ling. In the next moment, an overwhelming spiritual pressure came crashing down, shaking the entire heavenly Tao space. Ripples spread out in the heavenly Tao space, and endless cracks spread out like a spider web. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, unperturbed as usual. A few golden leaves flew out from the gaps in the heavenly Tao space. Then, they spun rapidly and turned into blades that swept over from all directions. Wang Ling stretched out his hand and made a circle in the air to create a barrier. However, these endless golden leaves actually cut right through his barrier. This barrier was created by Heavenly Tao, and Wang Ling hadn't expected these golden leaves to be able to cut through Heavenly Tao. Wang Ling had no choice but to use his body movements to dodge. After all, if these leaves cut his face, he didn't know if there would be blood, but they would definitely peel off a bit of skin. The 6 great heavenly Tao turned pale with fright at this scene. They were astonished at the origin of these golden leaves. The golden leaves of the cosmic god tree. Strength Heavenly Tao was dazed. Gu Xuanji even has a godly object like this. Cosmic god tree, rumor had it that this was a tree at the very center of the universe. Every leaf on it contained the truth of Heavenly Tao. Strength Heavenly Tao never expected that not only would Gu Xuanji have its leaves, he would also refine them into a magic treasure. Encountering the cosmic God tree is already an amazing fortuitous encounter. This tree is at the very center of the universe, and there aren't many people who can find it. It was as if a beautiful picture of the universe had appeared in Time Heavenly Tao's eyes, and it was as if he was looking at the long history of the cosmic God tree. Time Heavenly Tao opened its palm, and a magnificent and massive divine tree with golden leaves like a phoenix rising from the ashes appeared in its palm. This was a miniature image of the cosmic God tree. However, this was exactly what the cosmic God tree currently looked like, and a strong aura of the truth of Heavenly Tao washed over them. The 6 great Heavenly Tao were all deeply shaken. If it wasn't for Gu Xuanji, it had already been a very long time since they had observed the cosmic God tree grow. They were shocked because the cosmic God tree was now almost fully grown. Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. I remember that the cosmic God tree was just a small sapling back then. I never thought that in the blink of an eye, it would actually become so valiant and spirited. I'm a little curious about its growth. Time Heavenly Tao recorded the history of the universe, so it naturally knew about the cosmic God tree's origin. As the scene changed rapidly, the magnificent, sky-reaching tree in Time Heavenly Tao's palm also returned to its sapling appearance. 1,280 times the speed. Time Heavenly Tao spun the time wheel. In the scene, the cosmic God tree started to grow rapidly from its sapling stage. About 8,000 years ago, the cosmic God tree was still a sapling. The first fated person passed by. This person is Spirit Heavenly Tao asked. Celestial Monarch Gu Yuan. In other words, Gu Cheng's father and Gu Xuanji's grandfather, Time Heavenly Tao said. I didn't expect the first fated person to also have a connection to the Gu family. Strength Heavenly Tao said. Everyone stared at this celestial monarch Gu Yuan. When he arrived in front of the cosmic God tree sapling, he actually looked overjoyed. Just as the 6 great Heavenly Tao thought celestial monarch Gu Yuan was about to worship him, they saw him unbuckle his belt confidently. Damn! I'm suffocating. After a few seconds, a string of golden liquid was poured over the sapling. The 6 great Heavenly Tao. After that, the cosmic God tree grew from a sapling into a small tree. After that, about 6,000 years ago, another evil person, oh, no, another Tao Master powerhouse passed by fate. He also left behind fertilizer that he had accumulated for a long time on the cosmic God tree. The cosmic God tree grew up again. Chapter 868. There was a small sapling of the cosmic God tree at the center of each of the 10 universes, but only Universe 7's cosmic God tree was the strongest of the 10 universes. All of this had gotten out of hand when Star Sovereign Gu Yuan, Gu Cheng's father and Gu Xuanji's grandfather, had peed 8,000 years ago. After that, 6,000 years, 5,000 years, 4,000 years, as the cosmic God tree at the center of Universe 7, more and more fated people visited it. The most frightening thing was that these people were either Tao Masters or Tao Gods. They traveled the universe on their own, but couldn't find a place to pee. It contained their primordial qi, which couldn't be casually leaked out. It was very impolite to pee anywhere you wanted. Thus, Universe 7's cosmic God tree became a transit point for this group of bigwigs as they traveled the universe, playing the role of a highway rest stop. But reality proved that the bigwig's holy water was indeed extremely nutritious, and allowed the cosmic God tree to grow unprecedentedly strong. Look! His Excellency Ling's barrier is about to break. On this side, the 6 great Heavenly Tao had just finished reviewing the cosmic God tree's history when Strength Heavenly Tao suddenly cried out in alarm. Under the utterly stupefied gazes of the 6 great Heavenly Tao, those golden leaves, which were as thin as cicadas' wings, exerted tremendous power in front of the barrier. The spinning golden leaves were like the deadly gears in Saw, cutting the barrier that Wang Ling's serious clone had created to pieces. There weren't any powerful light effects, and these spinning golden leaves didn't even ripple in the slightest. However, He used his own tenacious strength to forcibly cut open the barrier. Wang Ling frowned inwardly. No one could see the attack process of these spinning golden leaves, but he could see it clearly with his king's eye's dynamic vision. The cosmic god tree's golden leaves shattered and regenerated on one side to complete this attack. The leaves themselves couldn't withstand the powerful density of the barrier at all. They shattered, but with their powerful vitality, they regenerated and completed the glorious mission of cutting open the barrier. They actually broke His Excellency Ling's barrier. Strength Heavenly Tao Sked. This is the first time I've seen someone break His Excellency Ling's barrier. It looks like this cosmic god tree leaf is indeed extraordinary. Since the cosmic god tree acknowledged Gu Xuanji's identity and allowed him to use its power, it seems that there is indeed a reason why Gu Xuanji could become the keeper of order in the three universes and rank first in fighting strength among them. Time Heavenly Tao also nodded. Gu Xuanji's performance was really good. We can give him a little red flower. As he spoke, Gu Xuanji spread open his slender fingers, and all the golden leaves of the cosmic god tree were summoned back. As if they had a mind of their own, the 7 golden leaves turned into 7 balls of light that hovered between his fingers. How about it? Am I qualified enough to be your opponent? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling and narrowed his eyes. To be honest, this golden leaf of the cosmic god tree is my trump card. You're the first person I've ever had to use it against an enemy. Wang Ling straightened his expression. He had a feeling that what Gu Xuanji had obtained from the cosmic god tree wasn't just these 7 tenacious golden leaves. As it turned out, Wang Ling's guess was completely accurate. Just as Wang Ling was feeling doubtful, he saw the smile gradually disappear from Gu Xuanji's face, which immediately gave him a signal. Gu Xuanji was going to unleash his real big move. At that moment, Gu Xuanji's aura soared as he formed a seal. The moment the seal was completed, the heavenly Tao space was actually shattered by a force. Right after that, Wang Ling and the 6 great heavenly Tao saw golden branches extend out of the cracks in the space. Branches of the cosmic god tree. The 6 great heavenly Tao were utterly shocked. They should have thought of this earlier. The 7 golden leaves of the cosmic god tree definitely weren't Gu Xuanji's only trump card. Not only had Gu Xuanji obtained the cosmic god tree's acknowledgement, he had also become its spirit master. Those seals that Gu Xuanji had used just now were none other than psychic seals. He had psychically summoned the cosmic god tree. As the most powerful divine tree in the universe, the moment the cosmic god tree appeared, it was as if the entire battlefield had tilted in Gu Xuanji's favor. Terrifying golden branches extended out of the cracks, as if they could extend all the way to the ends of the universe. Even Wang Ling was shaken by this kind of divine aura. It had to be said that Gu Xuanji had indeed given him a great surprise. He was 16 years old this year, and had yet to meet such a powerful person. None of the opponents he had met in the past could be compared to Gu Xuanji in terms of strength. If the 6 great heavenly Tao knew what Wang Ling was thinking at that moment, they would definitely be shocked, because this was already a pretty high evaluation. Gu Xuanji wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He had psychically summoned the cosmic god tree, and had its branches occupy the entire crack in the heavenly Tao space. He had already surrounded Wang Ling. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling confidently. How about it? Is it impressive enough? This time, it's really my trump card. So, do you want to compete with me with your psychic communication technique? If I win, I don't want anything. I just want to know who on earth you are. Gu Xuanji's words caused the entire heavenly Tao space to fall silent for several seconds. The branches of the cosmic god tree were aimed at Wang Ling. As long as Gu Xuanji willed it, these branches would immediately take action and bind Wang Ling. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense that these branches had a suppressive force, which was similar to Jinka's aura, but Wang Ling was sure that they weren't the same thing. You're very strong. To the surprise of the six great heavenly Tao, Wang Ling actually spoke. This wasn't telepathy. This wasn't telepathy. Wang Ling's words almost made Gu Xuanji's legs go weak, because this was the voice of a teenager who was clearly still in the puberty stage. He thought that given Wang Ling's strength, he had to be at least several thousand years old. Logically speaking, some of these big shots would indeed want to maintain their youthful appearance, but in order to highlight their identity as big shots, they would still maintain their adult voices. So in Gu Xuanji's opinion, Wang Ling's teenage voice sounded a little mischievous. But that was to be expected, because like everyone else, Gu Xuanji didn't know Wang Ling's real age. How about it, do you want to compete with me with the psychic spell? Gu Xuanji folded his arms and looked at Wang Ling. I can wait for you, gentleman's agreement. I promise I won't make a move before you use the psychic spell. You seem to be too confident. Wang Ling stared at Gu Xuanji as he spoke a second time. He stretched out his hand and clapped it in the air, and a psychic array instantly appeared. Gu Xuanji was stupefied at this scene. Sealing the psychic spell? What kind of operation was this? He had never seen it before. And the target of the psychic spell was even more shocking to Gu Xuanji. He rubbed his eyes to confirm that he wasn't seeing things. That was a toilet bowl. Chapter 869. Was this a toilet bowl, or was he under an illusion? This was the question that popped up in Gu Xuanji's mind the moment he saw the toilet bowl. He cast the clarity spell on himself several times in a row. Purification spell. High was dead spiritual disco dance spell, 10 years gone sober spell, to confirm that he wasn't seeing things because he had been hit by an illusion spell. That was indeed a white and flawless modern toilet bowl, and the most frightening thing was that it gave off a frightening aura. Furthermore, this aura wasn't the slightest bit weaker than that of the cosmic god tree. In fact, before Lord Ma had been summoned here, Wang Ling had already enlightened him a second time. Lord Ma, who had now been summoned, was already the most powerful of all the enlightened gremlins in the Wang family small villa. Second only to Lord Ma was Book of Sage Immortal Paid. But Book of Sage Immortal wasn't a gremlin who had been enlightened a second time. It was only because it had been enlightened later that it had a technical advantage. Wang Ling's ability to enlighten gremlins was also growing every day. The later the gremlins were enlightened, the more powerful they were. In fact, the ability to enlighten could also be superimposed. For example, he could enlighten them a second time. Gremlins who could be enlightened a second time were those who had gained Wang Ling's utmost trust. It could be said that Lord Ma had done a lot of hard work in the Wang family small villa. Not only had he been responsible for several teleportation missions, he had also currently become an ambassador for the human world and the demon world in order to achieve good communication. If an envoy from the demon world wanted to come to the human world, they had to report to Lord Ma. After presenting demon saints' consent, Lord Ma would specially build a portal. Apart from that, in daily life, Lord Ma also suffered a lot. In order to deal with Father Wang's habit of sitting on the toilet bowl for a long time, Mother Wang had Wang Ming invent the variable temperature toilet, so Father Wang would sometimes sneak into Wang Ling's room to use the toilet. Currently, Lord Ma was the only one who had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family. It was very touching. Hence, Lord Ma had a very high place in Wang Ling's heart. He had thought it over and over again for a long time before asking Lord Ma to come out this time. He thought for a while. Of all his battle strength that could communicate with the spirit, Lord Ma was probably the only one who was worthy of the cosmic god tree. Admittedly, Little Silver and Dog too could also be telepathically summoned, but it was clear that their combat strength was a little lower than that of the cosmic god tree. And now, after being enlightened for the second time, Lord Ma's strength had just reached the standard, which was no small matter. Thus, while he was deep in thought, Lord Ma transformed into his human form. In his human form, Lord Ma was an old man dressed in a white robe with a rather ancient charm. He looked like a scholar and had a scholarly air about him. He was completely different from the sh*t, piss, and fart that everyone had in mind. In fact, this image was also related to the expectations of all living beings towards toilets. If one's own toilet could take on a human form, what would it look like? Ever since the toilet was invented, how many famous scholars were suddenly inspired while squatting on the toilet? They completed one research after another that allowed human culture and scientific research to take another step forward. This was the ladder that allowed humanity to progress. How many innocent young men, in the middle of the night, threw the tissue wrapped in their offspring into the toilet bowl? This was humanity's reflection on reproduction. As a ladder for human progress and a reflection on reproduction, it could be said that Lord Ma's appearance played a decisive role. Every time he thought of this, even Wang Ling himself was moved beyond words. But it was clear that Gu Xuanji didn't understand this action. "You'll pay for underestimating me." Gu Xuanji took a deep breath. His eyes darkened, and he swiftly manipulated the cosmic god tree. As his hands made flower-like hand seals, Gu Xuanji only said 4 words, "Tree world descend." In an instant, the tree branches that were originally densely packed in the heavenly Tao space suddenly moved in unison. They started to spread out in Wang Ling and Lord Ma's direction like earth dragons rising from the ground. "My lord, be careful." Anxious to protect his master, Lord Ma swiftly made a hand seal and threw a cube at Wang Ling. Original world, water tank detachment spell. This was a spell that had been transformed from the water tank of the toilet bowl. At that moment, in Lord Ma's hands, it abruptly turned into a silver-white cubic dome that firmly enveloped Wang Ling. The spreading golden branches were firmly blocked outside and couldn't advance another step. It was just a short exchange, but the 6 great heavenly Tao felt a deep stab of pain, because now they finally realized a problem. They seemed to have realized that even a toilet bowl was stronger than them. How could it be cultivated? Lord Ma didn't use any flashy moves, he was completely using the power he had gained after being enlightened to fight. It wasn't that easy for the cosmic god tree's golden branches to catch Lord Ma. It was only at that moment that Gu Xuanji noticed how powerful Lord Ma was. The cosmic god tree's golden branches were about to catch Lord Ma several times, but Lord Ma didn't even budge. His body actually turned invisible in front of everyone, and those golden branches couldn't catch him at all. The power of space, Gu Xuanji could tell. This Lord Ma was proficient in the art of space, and had also mastered the ability to layer space. When faced with a threat, part of his body or all of it could escape into other layers of space, and when the threat was over, he could release his real body again. Gu Xuanji smiled slightly. This was indeed a very powerful ability. But in Gu Xuanji's eyes, the spatial layering spell wasn't a precious spell at all. His chains of order could even penetrate the 3 universes. A mere spatial layering spell was completely subdued by his chains of order. Thus, Gu Xuanji quickly thought of a countermeasure. He once again summoned the chains of order, which pierced through Lord Ma's spatial layering, and used them as a bridge to connect the 2 spaces together. Moreover, the connected space was no longer separated from the inside and the outside. Just like that, Lord Ma's spatial layering spell was cracked. The next moment, the golden branches also firmly grabbed Lord Ma's shoulder. Not good. Lord Ma knew things weren't looking good. Was he going to lose? No, he could still struggle a little. In fact, he still had an ultimate big move against the cosmic god tree that he hadn't released yet, even if he lost. He was going to lose standing up. If he lost without using a big move, that would be too aggrieving. So Lord Ma took a deep breath and opened his mouth wide. The next moment, an endless suction force was generated, and actually formed a storm in the space. With the sound of the toilet flushing, Gu Xuanji finally realized that this Lord Ma's ultimate big move was actually the spatial swallowing spell. At first, Lord Ma hadn't wanted to use this move. Because it was a move with a smell. When the spatial swallowing spell was used, the space passage would be reconnected, and the smell of the filth that had been swallowed in the past would be transmitted directly through his mouth and the other space. Childish. Gu Xuanji laughed again. You want to fight the cosmic god tree with just this level of suction? The cosmic god tree has been at the center of the universe for 1,000 years, and is already used to any spatial fluctuations. In the end, as soon as Gu Xuanji finished speaking, smelling the familiar scent, the cosmic god tree actually stopped restraining Lord Ma at that moment. Indeed, the cosmic god tree hadn't been swallowed by the vortex created by the spatial swallowing spell. But the cosmic god tree, the moment Lord Ma opened his mouth and smelled the familiar scent, it was suddenly hungry, and so, in the next second, the cosmic god tree extended its branch and crawled into Lord Ma's mouth. Wang Ling 1. Chapter 870. Gu Xuanji had lost. He knelt on the ground, looking a little dazed. He had completely lost this battle. The cosmic god tree was already his ultimate trump card. As the most powerful psychic object in his possession, Gu Xuanji never thought that in the end, he wouldn't even be able to deal with a mere toilet bowl spirit. He had completely lost to the youngster in front of him. No matter how you looked at it, the other party had beaten him by too much. Wang Ling walked up to Gu Xuanji and patted him on the shoulder. To be honest, Wang Ling also hadn't expected the cosmic god tree to be drawn away by Lord Ma. He had already been holding back by summoning Lord Ma, because even though Lord Ma had been enlightened a second time, its overall battle strength was still inferior to the cosmic god trees. In the end, it had turned out to be such an unexpected outcome, but Wang Ling had to admit that Gu Xuanji had already done very well. To be able to force his serious clone to this point definitely wasn't something an ordinary person could do. It could only be said that as expected of the Keeper of Order recognized by the three universes, it's really amazing. But on second thought, Wang Ling felt that it wasn't a good thing to push Gu Xuanji too hard. As a Keeper of Order who maintained the order of the universe, he definitely couldn't be pressured. Wang Ling was worried that this defeat would be a big blow to Gu Xuanji. So after seeing Gu Xuanji's dazed expression, he decided to give him a little reward to comfort him. After all, Gu Xuanji wasn't a bad person, he was the strongest Keeper of Order in the 10 universes. Maintaining order in the universe required hard work even if it wasn't meritorious service. At that moment, Gu Xuanji knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground, his face full of unhappiness. He had thought that this battle would at least end in a draw, and never thought that he would actually lose so miserably. When the youth's well-defined fingers pressed on his shoulder, Gu Xuanji felt as if his entire soul had been shaken. At that moment, Wang Ling saw that Gu Xuanji's eyes were a little excited. Then, the latter firmly grasped Wang Ling's hand, his eyes full of curiosity. "Can you tell me, why are you so strong?" Wang Ling stared at Gu Xuanji with a silent expression on his face. If only he knew why he was so strong, that would be great. Unfortunately, even he himself didn't know why he was so strong. Even the fact that he had mastered the 10 universes and 30,000 great Daos was something he had only found out yesterday. Gu Xuanji was very tired, and so was Wang Ling. Gazing into the sky, he saw that the dome of the heavenly Dao space was a vast sea of stars. He heaved a deep sigh, then turned around and directly disappeared. But before he disappeared, he left behind a reward for Gu Xuanji. This was a packet of enchanted crispy noodle snacks. He was worried that he would regret taking it back, so the moment he left the crispy noodle snacks, he immediately left. Gu Xuanji picked up the crispy noodle snack on the ground with both hands and observed it for a long time, lost in deep thought. At that moment, after Wang Ling left, the 6 great heavenly Dao also surrounded him. "Strength Heavenly Dao, young friend Gu, we have a presumptuous request." Gu Xuanji looked up. "Strength Heavenly Dao, can you give us the noodles in your hands?" Gu Xuanji understood that the face this senior had left for him was not ordinary. To be able to make even the heavenly Tao fight over it. The truth was that the heavenly Tao had a lot of crispy noodle snacks, but the one in Gu Xuanji's hands was the only one they wanted no matter what. Because the noodles in their hands weren't ordinary, but expired, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the enchanted version in Gu Xuanji's hands. Gu Xuanji, I'm very sorry, this is something Senior gave me. I don't intend to sell it. The six great heavenly Tao sighed. This was the answer they had expected, and they couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Strength heavenly Tao, then, can young friend Gu fulfill our other request, Gu Xuanji? Strength heavenly Tao said seriously, I want to lick young friend Gu's hand. Your hand touched His Excellency Ling's just now, right? Gu Xuanji was frightened. He immediately fled the heavenly Tao space with the crispy noodle snacks. He never thought that the six great heavenly Tao of the seventh universe would actually be such a bunch of idiots. Strength heavenly Tao, young friend Gu. Don't go. I beg you. Let me lick. No. Just a sniff. Time heavenly Tao, AI. Don't be reserved at a time like this. We should have pushed him down together just now, then directly lick him and be done with it. Death heavenly Tao, next time, don't talk nonsense. Just do it. On the way back, he also ate the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, and so, from then on, in this universe, there was another man who was infatuated with crispy noodle snacks. After this man returned to his own time, he was punished by his own father for secretly eating the crispy noodle snacks on the offering table. Meanwhile, Lord Ma and the Cosmic God Tree's game of tag was still going on. The Cosmic God Tree had turned into a human form and was running happily in Lord Ma's world. She was an imaginable tree spirit girl who was full of the divinity of the universe. She wore a golden coat and golden hair, and even her long hair was adorned with dark golden leaves, which looked very pretty. But it was precisely this beautiful young lady who was currently running wildly in Lord Ma's world. Her feet were stepping on the golden, perhaps for many people, this was very disgusting. But for the Cosmic God Tree, it was rare fertilizer. Lord Ma transformed his spiritual consciousness into the inner world and talked to the Cosmic God Tree. Miss, please leave, this isn't the place for you. Miss Yu stretched out a branch and sucked up the rich fertilizer on the ground. I haven't eaten so much in a long time. This place of yours is simply heaven. Only a fool would go out. Miss, this filthy place is just like your identity as a Cosmic God Tree. Lord Ma advised earnestly. TSK. I don't care about being some divine tree, people have to live, and so do trees. I'm helping you clean up the filth, you should be thanking me. As she said that, Miss Yu stuck out her branch again and stuck it deep into the ground. Lord Ma blushed. When had he ever been so deeply penetrated? Even his words were trembling. Miss Yu, you, don't. He had never had such a beautiful girl suck him dry of nutrients. But this Miss Yu didn't listen to his advice at all. The Cosmic God Tree's branch took root deep in Lord Ma's inner world and sucked in big mouthfuls of nutrients. You. Lord Ma clenched his teeth. You men are all pig trotters. You should be very comfortable, right? Ah. No. I can't. Miss Yu, stop. Miss Yu sucked in a few more mouthfuls, then let out a satisfied burp. The color of her golden branch became even brighter. Baidu search 881 Chinese network yen. No advertising words. Chapter 871. Lord Ma wanted to cry but had no tears. As a toilet, he had conscientiously guarded the built-in toilet in Wang Ling's bedroom for so many years. Although he had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family, he had never been so deeply violated, but this Miss Yu was clearly unaware of this problem. She happily wandered around Lord Ma's inner world, grinning from ear to ear. The branches that extended out from behind her sucked up the nutrients under her feet in large gulps, as if she was walking on a golden beach of delicacies. Miss Yu, really, stop messing around. Lord Ma couldn't take it anymore. His legs felt like jelly, and he almost couldn't stand. He could only blame this Miss Yu's suction force for being too strong. He had been a toilet for so many years and sucked in countless things. Lord Ma didn't think he was a match for her in terms of suction force. But when he bumped into this Miss Yu today, he realized that he was still too young. It could only be said that Miss Yu was Miss Yu in the end. As a tree spirit derived from the cosmic god tree of Universe 7, from the moment it had been watered as a small sapling, Miss Yu had used her powerful ability to absorb nutrients to grow to this stage. It was no wonder that this Miss Yu was the most well-developed cosmic god tree among the 10 universes. When the cosmic god trees of other universes had just produced a door and sword, this Miss Yu of Universe 7 had already successfully produced a set of 6 godly equipment. The cosmic god tree ran in front and Lord Ma chased after it. When Lord Ma was so weak that he couldn't run anymore, Miss Yu finally stopped and firmly grasped Lord Ma's hand. "You're a toilet and I'm a tree spirit. We're a match made in heaven." Lord Ma was startled. There was actually a connection between the two. "I don't care. Ever since I started following Gu Xuanji, he hasn't fed me enough once. Although the quality of the fertilizer in your space is uneven, at least the quantity wins," Miss Yu praised. Lord Ma, however, wasn't happy at all. Speaking of Gu Xuanji, Lord Ma was suddenly a little curious. "If I may be so bold, Miss Yu, why did you choose to be with this Mr. Gu back then?" Miss Yu smiled a little shyly. "So many people peed on me, and they directly treated me as a public toilet. Later, I realized that Gu Xuanji's fertilizer was exceptionally good, so I decided to follow him. But it took him a month to excrete, which really made me anxious." Lord Ma, cultivators with high realms could control their metabolism, and a cosmic keeper like Gu Xuanji would often forget to go to the toilet because he was too busy. But for some reason, Lord Ma could hear a hint of coquettishness in Miss Yu's words. "Miss Yu, if you don't mind, can I also sign a contract with you?" Lord Ma was shocked. "You and me? I'm just an enlightened monster." Miss Yu bit her finger. "What does that have to do with me?" "I only know that you're a master who can feed me until I'm full. Moreover, this space of yours has an endless stream of excrement, which saves me the trouble of looking for food everywhere." Lord Ma took a deep breath. "Miss Yu, you mustn't. If you want to sign a contract with me, you have to terminate it first, right?" Miss Yu said, "If you want to terminate the contract, then so be it. What's the big deal?" Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. He could only quickly come up with an excuse. "That's even worse. If my master blames me, I'll return to my original form. Miss Yu, you might not be able to find me in this lifetime." Miss Yu sighed. "Your master is really strict. But it should be fine to ask your master to make an exception, right? What does your master like? I'll go give him a gift." Lord Ma's crispy noodle snacks, that's easy. After saying that, Miss Yu's gaze started to wander around under her feet. "Lord Ma, what are you looking for, Miss Yu? There's no crispy noodle snacks in poop." "Who said that?" Miss Yu then picked up a pile of poop. "Look, this pile of poop is transformed from crispy noodle snacks. Other people can't tell, but I can see it with one glance. These things are filthy in your eyes, but in my eyes, they're what they looked like before they became poop." Lord Ma turned pale with shock. What kind of damn ability was this? After saying that, Miss Yu started to point out other poop. "Look, that big pile is transformed from spicy hot pot. And that pile looks very fresh, it's transformed from fruit salad. And that's braised chicken and rice, overlord macaron, 6-layer beef burger, whole lamb, steamed bear's paw, whole reed, roasted flour duck, roasted goose, saucy pig, saucy duck, saucy chicken, saucy pork belly. Lord Maw. It was Saturday, August 19th. It was the 6th day of the summer vacation. A very familiar patient came to Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. This person was none other than Li Jiao. Since the last time he had been forced to eat crispy noodle snacks, Wang Ling had enchanted a bacterium in passing. Li Jiao's diarrhea hadn't stopped, and his body was about to collapse. His son Li Hao had already been kicked out of school, and he had received a tip-off that the school board was planning to deport them to the Vampire Management Center in Lishio Nation. Thus, Li Jiao took Li Hao and fled Songhai City that very night, and thought of a way to get to Chrysanthemum Island. When Immortal Toya saw Li Jiao, he was extremely haggard and didn't look like a teenager at all. He looked like a zombie. On the side, the muscular Li Hao dropped to his knees with a thud. Immortal. I beg you. Save my father. We have nowhere else to go now, we can only come to you. Immortal Toya initially didn't want to get involved in this trivial matter. After all, this was someone Ling Jinren had blacklisted, but a doctor had a benevolent heart. Looking at Li Jiao's painful and miserable diarrhea, Immortal Toya couldn't bring himself to do it. If he didn't do anything, Li Jiao might very well die from diarrhea. Is your father still having diarrhea? Immortal Toya asked. He's wearing an anal plug now, but it's actually very uncomfortable. As his son, Li Hao replied, Li Jiao already couldn't speak at all. Even when they were on the island, Li Hao had to carry him on his back. I might not be able to cure your father, but I might be able to alleviate some of his pain. Immortal Toya stared deeply at Li Jiao and sighed. Li Hao lowered his head. I'm very sorry about the school. Immortal Toya looked at Li Hao. It seems you still don't understand. The reason why you and your father ended up like this has nothing to do with the school at all. After saying that, Immortal Toya wrote 3 letters in the air and said, carry your father on your back, then comprehend it yourself. Li Hao stared at these 3 English letters with a stupefied expression. G. C. M. What did that mean? Aishang mobile reading address. Chapter 872. Li Hao knew that they had come looking for Immortal Toya because they really were at the end of the line and had nowhere else to go. Immortal Toya was famous in the circle for being a good person. Although he had made it clear on the public platform that he wanted to cut ties with DG High School, the only person Li Hao could think of who could help them in the end was Immortal Toya. Li Hao's heart was naturally filled with regret. He would never have thought that his cheap mouth on Tiaba back then would actually cause him and his father to fall into such a predicament overnight. Li Hao had initially thought that the worst-case scenario would be for them to return home to Lishio Nation. However, he never expected that the other board members of DG High School would actually abandon them as chess pieces in order to preserve the last bit of DG High School's reputation. They were now wanted by Lishio Nation's Vampire Management Association. As soon as they landed, they would immediately be put under the control of the association. In the truest sense, they couldn't return home. GCM, carrying his father on his back, Li Hao pondered what on earth these 3 letters meant. Immortal Toya had given them this hint when they were at the end of the line. This definitely wasn't nonsense. Perhaps this was the only way to save him and his father. But Li Hao still didn't understand what these 3 English letters meant. Li Hao followed Immortal Toya all the way to the island. At that moment, Li Jiao's unusually distressed voice suddenly rang out. Li Hao turned his face slightly. What's wrong, father? I can't take it anymore. Li Jiao's voice was unusually pained. In order to prevent continuous diarrhea, he had plugged his anus and held it in until now, and couldn't take it anymore. Father, we're almost there. Bear with it a little longer. Cold sweat trickled down Li Hao's face as he quickened his pace. But in the next moment, Immortal Toya heard a loud rumble. When he turned his head, he saw Li Hao, who was carrying Li Diao on his back, actually take off on the spot and fly forward as if he was carrying a rocket propeller. F***kme. Immortal Toya couldn't help swearing at this scene, and he hurriedly flew into the air to avoid it. But under the effect of this powerful propelling force, Li Hao continued to advance triumphantly. Finally, he charged all the way to the horizon. By the time Li Hao and his son landed on the ground, half an hour had already passed. Jin Shi and Yin Shi wore masks and cleaned up the filth on the island with purification talismans. During this period, Immortal Toya had also found an emergency plan for Li Diao that could temporarily relieve his pain. Immortal means. Li Hao looked at Immortal Toya's diagnosis report. In fact, he couldn't understand the words on the diagnosis report at all, because it was really too illegible. It was much better than the medical diagnoses written by the doctors in the hospital. Moreover, it was even more sloppy. If the hospital doctor's handwriting could be said to be sloppy, then Immortal Toya's handwriting was basically a mosaic of a sweater. Oh right, it's not like I don't understand it at all. Li Hao saw a string of numbers, 365 million, but it wasn't that he didn't know what it meant. At this time, Jin Shi suddenly said, "If you don't understand, then just say it. If you don't say it, who knows if you don't understand?" Li Hao. Then, Jin Shi took off his gloves and directly took the diagnosis report, translating it for Li Hao. Lord Shifu writes very clearly. Fight poison with poison, do you understand? Later, Shifu will write a prescription for your father based on this diagnosis. It's a powerful laxative, but it has the ability to clean the intestines and purify toxins. Shifu's diagnosis is that your father's condition is caused by an intestinal bacterial infection. Fight poison with poison. Li Hao was blank. Currently, this is the only way to save your father. Jin Shi said, but it's also risky. Your father might have diarrhea and die on the toilet. The mortality rate is about 28%, you have to understand. Apart from this method, there's currently no other way to save your father. The bacteria in your father's intestines are a kind of superbacteria, which is quite powerful. After taking the diagnosis report back from Jin Shi, Li Hao fell into a long silence. This was a very difficult choice. But Li Hao was also well aware that there was currently no one who could help them except Immortal Toya. I believe in Immortal's medical skills, I'll sign. In the end, Li Hao signed. Jin Shi nodded. He couldn't tell that Li Hao was a filial son, and then he took out a pose machine from his storage ring. The medical fee is 356 million yuan. Li Hao was shocked when he swiped his card. It's really expensive. Isn't it written in the diagnosis report? You should be able to read numbers, right? Said Jin Shi. Li Hao. So that was what that string of numbers meant. But the problem was that Li Hao and his father didn't have that much money at all. To come up with more than 350 million yuan, they would have to sell off several of their properties in Lishio Nation before they could just barely make up that amount. I only have 50 million yuan in pocket money right now, can I pay part of it first, and the rest in installments? Li Hao said weakly. Sure, it's more important to save a life. We're not demons. Everyone has their own difficulties, it's understandable. Jin Shi said in a very experienced manner. On the side, Immortal Toya was already stupefied. He felt that since Jin Shi had entered the city the last time, Jin Shi's sales ability had simply skyrocketed. After paying, Jin Shi and Yin Shi started to prepare the medicine according to their Shifu Immortal Toya's prescription. At that moment, Li Hao supported his father as he followed Immortal Toya to the island's toilet. This was Immortal Toya's own toilet, which he generally didn't let outsiders use. However, He hadn't expected Li Diao's diarrhea to be so serious, so he could only open up his own toilet. That was because an ordinary toilet clearly couldn't withstand Li Diao's impact. An immortal Toya's own toilet. This was actually something that Wang Ling had personally enlightened. This was Lord Ma too. But it was different from the real Lord Ma. Lord Ma too didn't have its own intelligence. It was just more sturdy than an ordinary toilet. Furthermore, Lord Ma too's internal space was connected to Lord Ma. At the same time, the real Lord Ma, who was still negotiating with Miss Yu of the Cosmic God Tree, saw at that moment that a black hole had suddenly appeared in the internal space, and countless fresh goods poured out. Miss Yu, this person should be a vampire, right? Lord Ma was startled. This, you can tell. Miss Yu pointed at the pile of fresh goods. Type A, Type B, Type AB, and Type O, Lord Ma. At that moment, Miss Yu suddenly cried out in alarm. Oh no! Lord Ma, what's wrong? Miss Yu, this person. I'm afraid he's been infected. There's poison in his poop. Chapter 873. Lord Ma realized that this author had been a bit out of his mind recently. He had finally made an appearance, but in the end, all the plots related to him were related to shit or poisonous shit. As a very principled toilet, even if Lord Ma thought he had a lot of complicated feelings toward butts, he deeply believed that his life as a horse shouldn't be like this. At that moment, Miss Yu had an extremely complicated expression in her eyes. The new lump of goods that had just fallen made her very uneasy. Lord Ma, do you have a way to get rid of these things? They're very bad. Miss Yu, what do you mean? Lord Ma stared at this lump of new goods. Apart from the fact that it was a little black and sticky, it was no different from the other old goods of various shapes and sizes. After all, in this space, there were all sorts of strange shapes and sizes. Some were long, some were sticky. In fact, it's not the thing itself that's bad, but what's inside it. You need a certain level of ocular power to see it. As she spoke, Miss Yu's golden centipede shone with an incredibly bright light. I'm sure that there's something wrong with it, is that so? Lord Ma also used his ocular power, and his pupils emitted a dark brown light. It was different from Miss Yu's Eye of the Universe, which was an ability unique to the Cosmic God Tree. It sounded like a very domineering name, but in fact had a lot to do with the power of nature, so Centipede's ranking probably wasn't that high. On the other hand, Lord Ma's centipede was called the Eye of No Beginning. This name was a homonym of a certain word, and Lord Ma had forcibly changed it to sound more high-end. Lord Ma's centipede had the ability to purify. When Miss Yu mentioned that there was something wrong with the new lump of goods, Lord Ma used his centipede to scan it. Sure enough, he found that there were some strange red strips in the new goods. They were wriggling like worms. It should be bacteria, that's not right, can bacteria be so big? Lord Ma was startled. Lord Ma's space naturally also contains bacteria, but these bacteria are abnormal and clearly different. They have to be purified quickly. Lord Ma. Miss Yu realized the seriousness of the problem. These bacteria are fighting with me for food. Lord Ma was taken aback. He immediately activated his art of no beginning. When the dark brown light shone on the bacteria, it could be seen that the bacteria were writhing in pain. Some of the bacteria were killed, but Lord Ma also discovered that his purification power couldn't solve the problem. This was because the bacteria were absorbing nutrients from the feces in his space while reproducing at an incomparably fast speed. His purifying power couldn't outrun their reproduction speed. Most importantly, Lord Ma noticed that the bacteria seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. This was no longer bacteria. Lord Ma did not want to admit it. How could bacteria grow to the size of a crab stick? Moreover, the latter's body was still growing with the nourishment. Lord Ma began to panic and broke out in a cold sweat. Miss you. What should we do? This was out of Lord Ma's expectations. He didn't expect such a dangerous thing to fall into his space. However, Lord Ma was very clear about the origin of this dangerous bacteria. The source of all this was that bacteria which his little master had casually enchanted back then. But perhaps even little Master Ling himself hadn't expected that the enchanted bacteria would actually start to reproduce faster in Li Jiao's body, and he would even expel some of them. Miss Yu frowned. We have to move space. We have to destroy this thing completely. It's too dangerous. Miss Yu stretched out her branches and joined in the firefighting operation. Lord Ma, Miss Yu, what do you think? Miss Yu, I'm going to use my spatial power to move this thing into outer space. In space, this thing will be frozen very quickly. I can kill it once and for all. Lord Ma breathed nervously and was a little nervous. There was no doubt that Miss Yu was stronger than him. Furthermore, Miss Yu indeed had her own unique technique for manipulating the power of space. But the question was, would things really go so smoothly? This was a super bacteria that had been enchanted. Furthermore, Lord Ma realized that among all the gremlins that little Master Ling had enchanted, this was the only gremlin that could actually reproduce and upgrade on its own. Lord Ma was utterly shocked. At that moment, Miss Yu opened up the space again. She used the branches as a bridge for the bacteria to climb onto her body, and finally connected the other end of the branches to outer space. Miss Yu, it's fine. These bacteria have infected my branches, so I can cut them off at any time. I won't feel any pain. Miss Yu's expression was very serious. Lord Ma was moved by Miss Yu's spirit. Even the legend of Buddha cutting off his own flesh to feed eagles couldn't compare to this. In order to exterminate this terrible bacteria, Miss Yu was actually willing to sacrifice her own body. What kind of fearless spirit was this? Lord Ma realized that he was actually a little teary-eyed. He felt that he might have misunderstood this unreasonable girl, or perhaps he was a little prejudiced against her. It seemed that the other party hadn't just gone deep into his inner space to eat and drink, she had indeed helped him a lot. Like maggots, the red bacteria crawled onto the branches of the cosmic god tree. Miss Yu waited patiently. Seizing the opportunity to confirm that all the bacteria had climbed onto her body, she sent them into outer space, and then directly cut off the entire branch. After successfully sending the bacteria into space, Miss Yu and Lord Ma breathed a sigh of relief. Lord Ma was overjoyed. Thank you, Miss Yu. You're welcome. Miss Yu clapped her hands. If these bacteria stay here, they'll easily damage other food and ruin my appetite for delicious food. Lord Ma, saying this, Miss Yu waved her hand and opened the space mirror. She was checking to see if the abnormal bacteria she had just sent out had frozen. However, what happened next was far beyond Miss Yu's expectations. The abnormal bacteria, which should have already been frozen, actually broke through the ice. The largest bacterium had already grown to the size of a baby, and even had limbs. Miss Yu turned pale with fright. It even swallowed the nutrients in my branches. Damned E. coli. In the space, the largest abnormal bacterium cackled coldly. Thank you for your guidance. I am the king of bacteria kings. You can also call me Lord Fungus. Lord Ma and Miss Yu had never expected that not only would this Lord Fungus grow its own limbs and gain sentience, it would even snatch away their spatial abilities. After leaving behind these words, Lord Fungus directly opened up a spatial hole and disappeared into it. Although he was an enlightened bacterium, he couldn't stay outside for a long time, and had to find a suitable host. Chapter 874. The enlightened E. coli had turned into Lord Fungus, and it had the terrifying ability to level up, devour, and reproduce. Lord Ma knew very well that the reason his Eye of No Beginning didn't work wasn't because of the Eye of No Beginning, but because the latter's reproduction ability was simply too powerful. This Lord Fungus very cleverly made use of its reproductive characteristics, constantly multiplying small E. coli around its mother's body to form a bacterial armor. It was like an orange that could never be completely peeled. You could never get rid of the flesh inside, and that was the most annoying part. What Lord Ma and Miss Yu hadn't expected was that Lord Fungus, who had originally planned to rely on the feces in the internal space to evolve, would instead rapidly evolve and obtain spatial abilities after climbing Miss Yu's branch into space. This time, they were really in trouble. Even Miss Yu was at a loss. Is it too late to use hand sanitizer now? Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. This Miss Yu was eating in his personal space, yet she was still thinking about washing her hands. She really was a good girl who loved cleanliness. You're eating with your hands, so why the hell are you talking about washing your hands? Miss Yu, can you sense where Lord Fungus is going? In the internal space, Lord Ma used his Eye of No Beginning to observe the various spaces. This was the Eye of No Beginning's second ability, spatial insight. However, this kind of spatial insight had its limits. Lord Ma could only see places with toilets. In this world, every place with a toilet bowl was like an ice stone to Lord Ma. Lord Ma could use the toilets scattered all over the world as an ice stone to observe. However, the observation range of each toilet bowl was limited, only 5 meters away. Even if there were many of them, he couldn't actually see much. Moreover, many spaces were dark because many people were using the toilets. If Lord Ma wanted to see the surrounding space, he would have to wait until those people's butts left. There was no way to get a good look. I'm contacting my friends from the Tree Clan to monitor together, Miss Yu said. Miss Yu blamed herself for allowing Lord Fungus to grow. She was also partly responsible for this. When dealing with that E. coli, she had been too idealistic. She hadn't thought about the problems that would arise later on. She should have just ignited her branch and burned the other party along with it. Even bacteria were afraid of high temperatures. But it was too late to say anything now. Lord Ma and Miss Yu were both using their spatial abilities to search for the escaped Lord Fungus. Compared to the limitations of Lord Ma's spatial abilities, Miss Yu's ability to sense her tree tribe companions and search together couldn't be more convenient. But what Lord Ma and Miss Yu didn't know was that Lord Fungus was a very, very cunning person. He went to a place without trees. At that moment, Li Diao was occupying the only VIP toilet on Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. In order to train Jean Shi's and Yin Shi's leg muscles, as well as to develop good toilet habits, Immortal Toya had installed squat toilets for his 2 disciples. Furthermore, they were equipped with an IFI signal blocker, and there wasn't even an internet connection inside. Since Lord Ma couldn't observe through the occupied toilet bowl, and since Chrysanthemum Island was full of bright chrysanthemums and there wasn't a single tree, it provided Lord Fungus with the perfect opportunity to commit the crime. Lord Fungus was afraid of light and fire, but the chrysanthemums on the island were lush, and the shadow of the sky gave it enough space to move around. The reason why it chose to come to Chrysanthemum Island was because the host it wanted was on this island. That was right, that host wasn't just anyone. It was the island master of Chrysanthemum Island, Immortal Toya. As a pharmacist, Immortal Toya had practiced medicine for 1,000 years and tasted all kinds of herbs. He was now the only descendant of the Toya clan. As a bacterium, under normal circumstances, it absolutely wouldn't look for an experienced pharmacist as a host, especially when the host was highly resistant to poison. It wasn't easy for it to enter the host's body and combine with it. But the situation was different now. It was the new Lord Fungus, and was probably the most powerful E. coli in the universe at present. If it successfully combined with Immortal Toya, it would be able to develop an extremely strong resistance to drugs, and might even be able to develop an immortal ability. Lord Fungus had already decided to give itself a new Daoist name. If this parasitic host operation was successful, it would infect the world and spread it all over the sky. If it didn't come back, it wouldn't come back, Devil Gut Fungus Lord. It had already thought of a Taoist name for itself. Next, it was time to act. While Li Diao was still receiving emergency treatment, Immortal Toya heard the alarm from the chrysanthemum array on the island. Someone had invaded. But who on earth was it? Immortal Toya frowned. Shifu, do you want me to go take a look? Jean Shi asked obediently. Take care of Mr. Li, I'll go take a look. Once Mr. Li's intestines are cleared, follow the previous plan and have him drink the medicine. After that, he'll have diarrhea for 3 days and 3 nights. As long as he can endure it, he'll recover, Immortal Toya replied. Yes, Shifu. Then, Immortal Toya went outside. He stared in the direction of the chrysanthemum array's alarm and frowned. The truth was that he had a very bad feeling, and it was precisely because of this feeling that Immortal Toya had tactfully declined Jean Shi and Yin Shi's invitation to go take a look. Senior Immortal, it seems that my island has been invaded. If I don't reply in 15 minutes, please send someone to take a look. To be on the safe side, Immortal Toya sent grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a text message before he went to take a look. Then, he went deep into the chrysanthemum array. The array under his feet was a top-secret design by his ancestors, and 99% of people who entered it would be lost and lost. With each step he took, the chrysanthemums on the side would constantly shift and change their paths, which had the effect of a dazzling flower. These chrysanthemums had all been specially custom-made, and each one was a full 2 meters tall. Furthermore, the chrysanthemum array had a flight restriction, so it wouldn't be easy to fly over it. Before entering the array, Immortal Toya looked up at the blue sky. The other party hadn't invaded through the air. Thus, he could only go deep into the array and look for the intruder through the location of the alarm. But what Immortal Toya didn't expect was that the intruder wasn't human. It was an enlightened bacterium whose aura couldn't even be sensed. While Immortal Toya was inspecting the array, danger was quietly closing in on him from behind. Chapter 875. Sunday, August 20th. It was the 7th day of the summer vacation. For Wang Ling, summer vacation was supposed to be a leisurely and peaceful one. He didn't have to get up early to go to school, and he didn't even have to do his summer homework himself. It seemed that the only thing he had to do was slack off as he watched a silly TV series on the TV with a pack of iced crispy noodle snacks. But his imagined summer vacation wasn't peaceful at all. It had been a long time since Wang Ling had had an ominous dream. The last time he had had one, he had dreamed that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in danger. But this time, he dreamed of Immortal Toya. Unlike the last time he had dreamed of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, however, Immortal Toya wasn't lying in a pool of blood. Immortal Toya was clearly still alive, but his temperament was completely different. Furthermore, in the dream, Immortal Toya actually abused Jean Shi and Yin Shi. For Immortal Toya, Jean Shi and Yin Shi were like his sons and daughters. Although Immortal Toya had always been very strict with Jean Shi and Yin Shi when it came to alchemy, he would never commit this kind of domestic violence. In his dream, Wang Ling saw that Jean Shi and Yin Shi's eyes were swollen like pandas. This definitely wasn't the work of that scheming woman from Sun Island who had deliberately put on makeup to prove that she had been beaten up by her boyfriend. Wang Ling was ready to go to the island to take a look. But before he set off, he realized that he had missed several missed calls on his wristwatch. All of them were from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Unlike an ordinary dream, a foreboding dream couldn't be easily interrupted. That was to say, he would enter a state where no one could wake him up until the end of the foreboding dream. It seemed that something had really happened. Wang Ling frowned and quickly sent grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a message. Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't been able to reach Wang Ling on the phone earlier, and hadn't dared disturb him directly, so he had been waiting in front of his phone. In the end, when he saw Wang Ling's ellipsis, he instantly became excited. "Brother Ling, something might have happened to Brother Tu. I was planning to visit his island, and I was a little worried about Jin Shi and Yin Shi. He texted me a few hours ago, but I was at the broccoli farm at the time and didn't notice it right away. In order to better cultivate the heavenly Tao broccoli, Brother Ling knows that there's no signal on our farm to eliminate all radiation." Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, had been very busy recently with the heavenly Tao broccoli. Ever since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had eaten the heavenly Tao broccoli in front of everyone at the opening ceremony and become a true venerated, the Office of Strategic Deception's heavenly Tao broccoli orders had completely exploded. Currently, all the heavenly Tao broccoli on the breeding farms had been booked out, and there was even a long queue for later orders. Currently, the latest order was already 50 years in the future. Moreover, the time for this order was still increasing. It could be said that the supply could not meet the demand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal then sent a location. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was currently moving the coordinates. He was still a little far from Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. It was a pity that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't brought Wuji with him, otherwise he would have been able to reach Chrysanthemum Island in an instant with Wuji's ability to travel through space. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could also use his own strength to open up a space. But he could only move it over a small area. That was because, in the end, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't a cultivator who specialized in space. Wang Ling had done some research before and found that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was a cultivator with a metal spirit root. This type of cultivator was more resilient and had extremely powerful penetrating spells. They had a special effect on defensive spells that broke through defenses and resisted attacks. Since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already on his way, Wang Ling felt that he didn't need to be in such a hurry to get there. Given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's current realm, an average opponent wouldn't be able to shake him at all. What was more, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him. He was a tanky MT warrior who could resurrect infinitely. But while Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's realm and strength had been secretly bestowed by Wang Ling, it wasn't enough to just give him realm without spells. Every famous person had their own signature spells. For example, the old devil's chaos ball. For example, General Yi's palm sword. Another example was the recently very popular Six Studies Bible, which was the signature spell of the famous performance artist Teacher Six. Wang Ling remembered that he had specially studied this spell, which allowed a cultivator to directly summon a heroic spirit in the morning hall. It was a pretty remarkable spell. In contrast, it seemed that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't have any more signature spells, if a suicidal spell could be considered a photo spell, but the problem was that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't Cheyenne. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand and pondered. He was going to give Grenade-throwing a spell that suited his metal spirit root. A few minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was hurrying to Chrysanthemum Island on his sword, suddenly saw a space open up in front of him. Wang Ling took the initiative to stretch out his hand and hand him an exercise book. This was a special exercise book for students that all students used. It was light and convenient, and was mainly used for doing math homework. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the exercise book, he was almost blinded by the glittering golden characters in it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stupefied. This exercise book actually contained a metal palm technique called Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. Brother Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the exercise book away and typed excitedly. This was the first time that Wang Ling had given him a spell, and he didn't know how to thank him in words. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal typed excitedly, "Was this spell collected in an ancient book?" "I just made it up," Wang Ling replied simply. "Just made it up? What version was this?" What was the difference between this and a hardcover? When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw these 3 words, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he sucked in a cold breath of air. He finally realized how perverted this spell was. Wang Ling had actually just made it up. Nowadays, could there still be people who could casually make up spells for fun? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had thought that his worldview had been shattered and rebuilt after he had seen Wang Ling spend a few minutes to refine more than 10 holy weapons. In the end, he couldn't help being shaken to the point of shattering once again when he saw this scene in front of him. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing. It was the learning instructions for this Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, because the entire exercise book was filled with golden runes that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't understand. The only thing he could understand were the words Wutian Golden Buddha Palm on the first page, as well as the learning instructions below. The contents of the first page went like this: Title, Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, Instruction. Please swallow the exercise book, and you will automatically comprehend the spell. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.